support for... This election clearly showed that Americans are wildly frustrated with our broken immigration system. Said Jeremy Robbins, executive director of the New American Economy, a group, the board of which includes Bloomberg, Murdoch, and leaders of business giants Marriott, Disney, and Boeing. But it would be a mistake to equate their desire for someone to secure the border with support for mass deportation or other hardline policies that would both devastate the economy and undermine core American values. It's a lie, I say. Now, this is what I call fake news. Why not? Fake news is the catchphrase of the day, right? It's all fake. Well, I say again, if you take a bunch of people out of the system that are spending money, the value of your dollar just went up. But, now, Robbins' organization has in recent days unveiled coalitions of business leaders and public officials that oppose an immigration crackdown, many of them Trump supporters, across Utah, California, South Carolina, Florida, and Colorado, with more coming in Arizona, Idaho, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Texas. Backed by its directors' deep pockets, the group is working to create a permanent infrastructure that will pressure the new administration and members of Congress in key battlegrounds, even before the debate officially begins on Capitol Hill. So as we know, Mr. Trump has railed against the dangers of illegal immigration throughout the campaign, several times sharing the stage with parents of children killed by immigrants in the country illegally. Trump's transition team declined to answer questions about his immigration plans this week. On deportation, Trump told 60 Minutes shortly after the election he would prioritize deporting between 2 and 3 million people that are criminal and have criminal records, gang members and drug dealers. And then in this article, such a plan would largely be in line with the Obama administration's current plan. The business world was caught flat-footed when Trump won. Daniel Garza, executive director for the Koch brothers-backed Libre initiative, which supports a pathway to citizenship for immigrants in the country illegally, opposes mass deportation. This is going to take a while. In the meantime, we will make sure our voice is heard. So basically, as long as it's in line with soon-to-be gone, thank God, President Obama, well, they're okay with it. Deporting 2 or 3 million criminal illegal aliens. That's in line with Obama's plan, so that's okay. Well, 2 or 3 million people, if that's not a mass deportation, I don't know what it is, but these guys say on the one hand they don't want mass deportation. It would just crater the economy. These people are as accurate in predicting what will crater the economy as they were in predicting that Hillary Clinton would be president. Their ideas, and in fact their comments, should be disregarded completely, and I only bring them to your attention so that you will at least have an idea that the big shots, they're not for this mass deportation. Well, that's too bad because it's going to happen anyway. And it's true. No human being is illegal. However, human beings entering the country illegally, well, there it is. That's illegal. Their act is illegal. Now, from RT, robot takeover begins. Corporate giant Capita replaces staff with automatons or automatons, whichever you prefer. Outsourcing giant Capita is to sack 2,000 staff and replace them with robots in a move some fear will be repeated across the economy, leading to more than 1 million job losses. Well, there's already 94 million people not in the workforce. One more is not going to make any difference. I'm kidding. It's that's what happens when the unions and even non-union groups begin demanding things like $15 per hour minimum wage. The economy can't support it. Your little McDonald's cheeseburger is going to wind up costing $5 instead of $2. Okay? Where is some sanity? Well, how about some more insanity? From dailystar.co.uk. Now, notice we have to get this news from the UK. Fukushima nuclear plant radioactive fish found on west coast of U.S. Fish found off the U.S. coast has raised fears the country's food chain is polluted, and the Fukushima nuclear disaster is being blamed. Highly toxic cesium-134, the fingerprint of Fukushima, was found in Tillamook Bay and Gold Beach, Oregon. The terrifying discovery was reported by researchers at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. The 2011 Fukushima nuclear meltdown was sparked by a massive tsunami off the coast of Japan, caused by a 9.0 magnitude earthquake. Since then, the entire area has been a dangerous no-go zone. Well, we know that. But cesium-124 has also been detected in Canadian salmon for the first time, reported chemical oceanographer Jay Cullen, who's leading the Fukushima INFORM team, the FORM parts in caps, at the University of Victoria. But researchers were quick to point out that the risk to human health is low because of the relatively small quantities of radioactive material. The risk to human health is low, but not non-existent. The Statesman Journal reported Mr. Cullen saying, "It appears that the plume has spread throughout this vast area from Alaska to California. As the contamination plume progresses toward our coast, we expect levels closer to shore to increase over the coming year." So, the cesium in the fish is, the dangers to human health are low, but again, not zero. Now, to make matters even more angst-ridden, John Kerry recently made a little trip down to the South Pole, down to Antarctica, right? Buzz Aldrin went down there too, and he had a little medical episode. But this little piece from helenastales.weebly.com goes like this. Buzz Aldrin has tweeted an ominous warning on Twitter this week, claiming that, quote, "We are all in danger. It is evil itself," accompanied by a picture of a pyramid at the South Pole. And that's all there is. If you go to, let me see here. Yep, here we go. The tweet comes days after the U.S. astronaut was mysteriously taken ill in Antarctica and had to be evacuated to safety in nearby New Zealand for emergency medical treatment. Now this is Superstation 95, so Mr. Aldrin appears to be referring to this object as seen in an it says serial photo from Google Earth. I think aerial photo is what they're talking about. So there's the photo. The pyramid is located not far from the UK's Princess Elizabeth Station at the South Pole. As has been reported worldwide by the media, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry recently traveled to the South Pole, allegedly to become better informed about climate change. So he goes to the South Pole. Kerry was the highest-ranking U.S. government official ever to visit the South Pole, and his visit struck many as unusual. Few saw any purpose whatsoever in sending America's top diplomat to the farthest reaches of the earth to see ice. But now, with Buzz Aldrin's tweet and its strange deletion, folks are wondering if sending America's top diplomat to no man's land perhaps had something to do with diplomacy after all. Is there some entity there with which we need diplomatic contact? If so, why did Buzz Aldrin warn that we're all in danger? Why did he call it evil itself? If there is something at the South Pole which may be evil itself, then let humanity know about it, so we can all decide upon a course of action to deal with it, even if the decision is to leave it alone. But since a trusted and respected astronaut has told us we're all in danger, then whatever is there has just become all of our business to decide what to do. Well, yes and no. There are some silly people out there who may come up with something really stupid by way of an idea of what to do. Right? Yeah. And now this thing. Our campaign, this is the Washington Post. Our campaign lost the election, but Trump's team must now own up to how he won. Well, it's easy. Your team got voted out. Jennifer Palmieri was a communications director for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. and writes, I know how to be a gracious loser. I could have let it go last week when Kellyanne Conway, Donald Trump's campaign manager, challenged me to look her in the eye and say she ran a campaign that gave white supremacists a platform. I considered for a split second. I knew you were supposed to be gracious when you come for the post-election forum at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, but I decided this was a year where normal rules don't apply. A year where, not a year when, a year where. Normal rules don't apply. Speaking the truth was more important. It did, Kellyanne, it did, I told her. It's just a fact. Trump winning the election doesn't change that. To my mind, his win makes it all the more important that the truth be acknowledged. My colleagues and I from the Hillary Clinton campaign knew what we were likely to face from the Trump side at the Harvard University event and thought hard about our obligations as representatives of the losing side in this most unconventional of years, particularly when our candidate actually won the popular vote by a large margin. That's a lie. My opinion, that is a lie, as I like to note. Clinton received more votes for president than any white man in U.S. history. Yeah, except every time they had a little bit of a recount, all it did was give Trump more votes. These people can't accomplish anything unless they twist reality. Our candidate gave us a good model to follow. Yeah, she had the grace to call Trump on election night to congratulate him and concede. But in her concession speech, she also challenged all of us to defend our rights and principles under the Constitution. Yeah, follow your leader Barack Obama's lead, right? Rights and principles that she and many of the people who voted for her feared could be under threat in a Trump presidency. The campaign has ended, and we accept that Trump won. You should address him as Mr. Trump. But we're not laying down our principles or abandoning our supporters. That's the frame of mind I brought to Harvard. I don't know whether the Trump campaign needed to give a platform to white supremacists to win, but the campaign clearly did, and it had the effect of empowering the white nationalist movement. Good. So what do you want? The illegal Mexican immigrant movement to take charge? Do you think that if they did, maybe this place might look more like Mexico than the good old USA? These people are so sick. Trump provided a platform by retweeting white nationalists, giving their views an audience of millions. Views previously relegated to the darkest corners of the Internet also had a platform on Breitbart, the website of Trump campaign chief executive Stephen K. Bannon. Richard Spencer, who also should be disregarded. Before Trump, our identity ideas, national ideas, they had no place to go. The fact that Donald Trump's doing so well, it proves that I'm winning. That's what David Duke said. At Harvard, some on the Trump team crowed that we in the Clinton campaign and those in the press were foolish because we took Trump's words literally. That's right, we did. You should take a candidate for president's words literally. You know who else took his words literally? White supremacists. The white supremacists who lauded Trump with cries of "Hail Trump." Duke, who expressed confidence that Trump's decision to make Bannon his chief strategist meant Duke's ideology would have a prominent place in the West Wing. That's reaching. The students who mocked Hispanic athletes with chants of "Build that wall." The man in New York City who threatened the off-duty female Muslim police officer last week. It's also true that many of the more than 65 million people who voted for Clinton took Trump's words literally. Well, that's good. What's your name again? Oh, yeah, Jennifer Palmieri. Well, Jennifer, here's the deal. Your ideas are ridiculous. Your so-called campaign couldn't do anything but twist, distort, and lie. Even your buddy Soros couldn't salvage the election for Hillary. Nobody reported seeing a vote switch from Hillary to Trump, only from Trump to Hillary. And, of course, any time that any real news came out about your candidate, you immediately labeled it as fake news, or, even better, Russian propaganda. Has anyone asked the question, how would it benefit the Russians by having Donald Trump as president? I know. World War III would be averted since all these mugs were calling for a no-fly zone over Syria and just kept doing things over and over and over again to try to prod the Russian bear into a war, like Turkey shooting down a Russian jet. I'm sure President Putin felt pretty badly about the loss of his pilot, but still, he just stayed cool. He did not take the bait. Then what did they do? Nothing. All they did was talk, because that's all they can do. It's the lamest party ever. It's not the Democrat Party of Harry Truman or John Kennedy. It's really more the party of Lyndon Johnson, who was also a hardcore criminal. I think that his initials, LBJ, should be taken off Highway 635. It's interesting that the Bushes have freeways named after them. Lyndon Johnson has a freeway named after him. And, of course, the famous sniper, Mr. Kyle, has a section of Highway 287 named after him. You know, I admire the skill of the long-range rifleman, but somehow, being somewhat warlike in nature, I still find it difficult to assign the title hero to people who fire on unsuspecting targets from a long ways away in deep cover. To me, this is good soldiering and very good marksmanship, but I'm not sure how heroic it is, unless, of course, you save a bunch of your guys and girls, unfortunately, who are pinned down by enemy fire, and you begin to take out the enemy fire, then you are heroes to those people. But, I mean, just like they called John McCain a war hero. I think Mr. Trump was a little rough on him when he said, I like people who don't get caught. It's like, yeah, well, there were a lot of American prisoners of war in the Vietnam conflict, but they didn't all get the label of war hero, did they? They got the label of tough guys who lived through it. And even at that, we didn't get them all back, did we? Remember that movie or book, or maybe both, We Can Keep You Forever? Yeah. So anyway, now Kellyanne Conway talked to Chris Matthews at MSNBC about receiving death threats and the need to end incendiary rhetoric. Pretty weird. She told Chris Matthews, some people refer to him as Lardball, on his program Hardball. She said, anytime I respond, anytime I defend myself against these allegations that are now leading to death threats, I'm seen as ungracious. Why are we sore winners? I'm not a sore winner. I'm a winner. My guy is a winner. He's the next president of the United States. These people just, they just don't know when to give it up, because they are so sure that the socialist way is the best way. We just have to have it, because if we don't, it won't be fair. Well, there's nothing fair about any of these things that these people have done in their positions of power. Barack Obama has done his best to ruin the country. It's completely ridiculous. And so, the majority of the people, isn't it interesting that it appears the majority of people in this country are not the loonies? They would have you think that the majority of the people in this country are loonies. Oh, absolutely, she won the popular vote. I say again, I think if you took out all the illegal voting, all the voter fraud, all the multiple votes cast by individuals, the dead people who voted, and on and on and on, I think you'd find out she lost by much more than even the numbers say. In the meantime, how about this Christopher Saproon? He's some sort of a emergency medical technician guy in Dallas, of course. Why did it have to happen here? He just can't vote for Trump. Doesn't matter that he won the election. As an electoral member, he just can't cast his vote for Trump. I hope this guy winds up suffering the same fate that Tawana Brawley claimed she was subjected to. Remember Tawana Brawley? You do? Oh, you don't? Well, she's the one that Al Sharpton defended as having been abused by a group of white men and smeared with feces from a dog. But it was not true. But you didn't hear very much about it not being true, did you? No, of course not. Why would you? And actually, it was not Tawana Brawley who made the claims. It was her handlers who made the claim. Okay, last little bit here. A little piece of science. Germany's wildly complex fusion reactor is actually working. The Wendelstein 7X reactor, which uses a complex design called a stellarator, is performing just like it was predicted to. This is an article in Popular Mechanics by Avery Thompson. Last year, Germany completed and turned on the Wendelstein 7X nuclear fusion reactor. This amazing piece of technology uses a complicated design called a stellarator, and scientists have finally managed to verify that the design works like it's supposed to. Nuclear fusion is a reaction like the type that powers the sun and other stars. Unlike the nuclear fission underway at our current nuclear plants, fusion generates far more energy without any harmful waste products. Theoretically, fusion reactors are capable of producing nearly limitless energy, using nothing but seawater as fuel. Theoretically. Fusion requires the kinds of temperatures and pressures found inside the cores of stars. And generating those conditions on Earth is extremely difficult, which is why the tech seems perpetually 5 or 10 or 20 years away. Most designs involve giant magnets and lasers, and that can get complicated also. The standard design of fusion reactor is called the tokamak reactor. It involves a ring of magnets that force the nuclear material to travel in a large circle. The stellarator design used by the W7X reactor adds several twists to the ring to increase stability. However, the stellarator design is still relatively untested, so a group of researchers spent the past year studying the W7X reactor to ensure that it was working the way it was supposed to. They found an incredibly small error rate, less than 1 in 100,000, which the researchers characterized as unprecedented accuracy. This is very good news for the W7X reactor, which was intended as a proof of concept for the stellarator design. Now that researchers know the accuracy of the reactor's magnetic fields, they can begin building new reactors that focus on efficiency. Unfortunately, current fusion reactors, including the W7X, are still not efficient enough to produce more energy than they use. However, the success of W7X gives the researchers hope that the next generation of fusion reactors will be able to reach that limit. So there you go. Fusion appears to work. Remember all that stuff about cold fusion? Oh, it works. Then no, it doesn't work. No, yeah, absolutely it does. And not really. Well, it looks like it's going to work. So we shall see. All right, we're going to have a conversation with Daryl Hamamoto, Dr. Daryl Hamamoto, University of California, Davis. And we're going to discuss, among other things, Bob Dylan is a Nobel Prize laureate. Can you believe this? Amazing. Why, when I was a child, he was nothing but hippie rabble, carrying a guitar and singing folk songs. But au contraire, he is an icon now. Put out a lot of music. From, which version of his song do you like better, the Bob Dylan version or the Jimi Hendrix version of All Along the Watchtower? That's a pretty easy one, isn't it? It is for me, at least. I like the immortal Jimmy playing it. And so much more stuff. By the way, I want to bring some to your attention. You know, there's a lot of piracy out there. You look around the web and you see that one big news site, pretty big, I'll give you a hint, starts with an I, has a call to action because the government wants to take down Drudge Breitbart and his outfit as well. Now, because they're being accused of fake news and being outlets for Russian propaganda. It's idiotic and it's stupid. Well, that's why we put the IP address at the top of the caravantomidnight.com homepage. You should write that number down, because if something happens with the DNS servers, the domain name servers, then you'll have the IP address. You just type in the numbers and it takes you to the same place that the letters and the name of the program would have taken you to, okay? There's a lot of piracy going on out there, too. I mean, so let me just give you a heads up on this. We have about 45,000, somewhere in there, subscribers to our YouTube channel. If you go to view a Caravan to Midnight video and you come to a site that says topic or Caravan to Midnight topic or Caravan to Midnight report, and it's got like 2 or 3 subscribers and 2 or 3 hits on, that's not us. So just don't even give them the click, because they're stealing from you. They're not stealing from me. They're stealing from you. Go to the just go to the Caravan to Midnight site that has between 40 and 45,000 subscribers, and you'll be at the right place. All right, ladies and gentlemen, delighted to welcome back to Caravan to Midnight Dr. Daryl Hamamoto, 20 years out there at the University of California at Davis. He's a leading scholar of American media and popular culture, has a research and teaching interest in sexuality studies. His current book project is titled New World Order Theory for Students, Beyond Race, Class, and Gender. His most recent book is Servitors of the Empire, Studies in the Dark Side of Asian America. He is the ranking senior professor in the Department of Asian American Studies at the University of California, Davis. As I say, he's taught there for 20 years. And he's a musician. He's very keen on music and music-related stuff, along with everything else, which, of course, was indicated by just mentioning the titles of his books. He's also made a number of videos as well. But the one that really got my attention, Skin on Skin. We hate Burning Man. So it's always a good conversation with Dr. Hamamoto. Welcome, sir. Good to have you back.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wells, for the invitation to join you and your audience. It's going to be a great conversation.
You know, it looks like Bob Dylan's going to be a no-show to pick up his Nobel Prize. Who would have ever thought when over AM radio we were listening to Like a Rolling Stone that he would wind up being a Nobel Prize recipient? Unbelievable.
Well, yeah, I remember that summer of 1965 when I was at a friend's house, the Yotsuka household, and he had an older brother who was a teenager, and he had one of those, you probably remember those record players with the arms that you could slide it away so that the 45 will just repeat over and over again, right?
Yeah.
So I walked in there and I was, not even a teenager yet, just barely there. And I heard this song. It's called Like a Rolling Stone. That was my introduction to Dylan because it riveted me even when I was a kid. And yeah, I mean, I'm kind of disappointed that he's not going to be at the ceremony. And the ceremony is to be held tomorrow. So this is a really timely topic here, Bob Dylan. Yeah, he's not going to be in Stockholm, is he?
No. He had other commitments, prior commitments. So he's somebody wrote that I hope that he does what Sartre did and just not show. So he's going to follow. He's going to follow the was it Jean-Claude Sartre?
Yeah. Well, he's a bit of an American existentialist himself, who is nonetheless deeply rooted into Americana. I think that's why he's such an important artist. But yeah, I guess he wouldn't be the first recipient to be a no-show or just decline the distinction outright. I don't think he's rejected the award, as some have, but I guess he doesn't place much priority on it, and I respect him for that.
Yeah. Oh, by
he's
the way,
still Dylan, after all these years, he's still surprising us and challenging us and teaching us.
By the way, it's Jean-Paul Sartre, not Jean-Claude. Sorry.
Yes.
I misspoke. Yeah, it's. I was at a Boy Scout campout. I wasn't feeling all that well, so I just went to the tent and lay myself down to get over it because, in those days there's no telling what would hit you or when. And I heard that song come over the radio like a Rolling Stone, and I thought, what is that? It was, it was strange how some of that music, but particularly Bob Dylan's music and
Hmm.
Beatles. Beatles was friendly music, and it was fine. It was upbeat, positive music. Dylan's had a little edge to it, a little darkness, especially with all that great compression that AM radio would do to the songs. It was really thick,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and then
But it really came out the little tiny speaker, though. And this was AM radio, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you know this, but that was all that pretty much was available back then. FM didn't really come in until about several years later. But you could hear this type of quality music across the country, the United States, on from all these different independent radio stations back then. There was true diversity in the music.
yeah, it was excellent. The FM
Excellent.
band was reserved for really boring adult contemporary elevator music and not really very much else.
No, until the days of underground FM radio came in with
And
people such as Tom Dowd up in San Francisco. But and of course Dylan fit really nicely into that FM format because a lot of his albums started to feature really long, unconventional songs, some running 11 and a half minutes, right?
yeah,
I think he's one
extraordinary.
of the first people to have so much material. He put it on a double LP, which would be Blonde on Blonde, which is still one of my favorite albums by anybody. That's
Yeah.
recommended. 1966. That was 1 year after Like a Rolling Stone.
Uh, yeah, that contrast that with I was in Nashville some years ago, and this guy was talking to me. He was part of the Sony Tree. He had been hired as a writer, and just listening to him talk about how they wrote songs. Like, well, we get together in the morning about 10 o'clock, and maybe by lunch we'll have a verse, and then we'll come back from lunch and maybe write another verse. It's like team writing on this stuff, and that's what so completely disappointed me about. Nothing against country music. I mean, it's got its place certainly. It's become rock and roll with a twang, but over the
Hmm.
last few years. But so few of these artists write their own music. They write their own lyrics. There are all these songwriters out there getting paid for this, and some of them have done quite well financially doing it. But I think it's always a little better when the performing artist actually wrote the song. I mean, I think that's kind of good.
Oh, it's excellent. In fact, I'm glad you raised that point because prior to Dylan, most performers, I don't care who it was, pop performers or even so-called folk performers like the Kingston Trio, all that material was written through sort of a factory process, sort of like a latter-day Tin Pan Alley. And Dylan was revolutionary in that respect. I mean, his early albums had traditional songs as well as covers, just like the Beatles. Most of their first album or two were covers. But Dylan was really the first major, what we call today, singer-songwriter. And that was revolutionary. And it really was a big statement about the music industry as such. But without him having to really even belabor the point, they said, okay, this is me and my guitar, straight from Greenwich Village. And it was John Hammond Sr., I think, who was instrumental. And he played for those of you who know a little bit of music history, he played a really important part in discovering, so-called, and signing a lot of jazz acts. But John Hammond Sr. immediately saw, wow, this guy has something special. And it was a return, really, to an earlier folk roots, I guess, when the music really belonged to the grassroots. It's kind of a throwback to that.
I'm really wondering if this picture, this PDF that you sent of that's titled "Dylan Towers Over Everyone." Salman Rushdie, Kate Tempest, and more pay tribute to Bob Dylan. I was scrolling down the page here, and there's a man with a mustache and goatee there, and rectangular glasses. And is that Guy Garvey, or that can't be Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top? He can't be. Where's the Mennonite beard?
What year was this?
No,
Let me see if I can find that article. Huh?
no, it's that PDF you sent me, the Dylan Towers Over Everyone. I'm just wondering who that man is.
Okay, let's see here. I'm clicking it on. I might be able to identify him. some early pictures here, some photos. Let's go to article. Oh, the guy with the glasses, with the burgundy shirt.
Uh, is it burgundy
Yeah,
shirt? No,
yeah.
he's got a striped shirt.
Oh, striped shirt.
Yeah,
That's a
it's the
different
third
one.
photograph from
Oh,
the
yeah,
top.
yeah. That's Salman Rushdie.
Okay, good. I was going that surely
Yeah.
that's not Billy Gibbons.
Oh, no, no, no. Billy Gibbons. We've never seen his eyes. I don't think he always wears shades like Karl Lagerfeld. But yeah, that's Salman Rushdie, who had a fatwa imposed on him when he came out with the Satanic Verses.
Yeah. Did you ever read
This is
that
over
book?
20 years ago. Pardon me?
Did you read that book, The Satanic Verses?
Yeah, I did. I did. It's kind of spacey, metafiction. It's not exactly pop literature. It's supposed to be literary novel. So and I say this because if someone like Salman Rushdie, who's a master of the English language, gives his approval, his imprimatur to Bob Dylan, I think that means something. Of course, he was part of that generation too. He was in Britain. I mean, Dylan took London by storm. I mean, the Beatles, John Lennon, they were in awe of him. And he made a really a huge impression. I think it was in '65 that he was there, and he was kind of, from what I've been reading, kind of already disgusted with all the hubbub around himself, around the music business, and he stated that he wanted to quit. Instead, he came back and they recorded Highway 61 Revisited.
Wow.
I mean, just one after another from, I guess, 63 or 64 through 65, 66, 67, I think were his prime years. I mean, he's still going strong. Yeah, that's Salman Rushdie. And I
Well,
think, by the way, the fatwa has finally been lifted, so he can go outside and walk around London looking like himself rather than in a disguise.
I read that book and I thought, I'm not really sure why this. I don't know why this has resulted in a contract being put out on the author.
Uh-huh.
I don't really see what the big insult is here. This is so far out. I can barely make any sense of it at all. Beginning with
I know.
you know, two people falling through the air and all of that stuff off the airplane.
Oh, you
It's
remember
just,
that, huh?
gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I scrolled down the page far enough to see Billy Gibbons. Now, this looks like Billy Gibbons, big red beard and a very strange hat on his head. It looks like it's covered with little green fingers or little tiny salad pickles. I don't know what it is, but it's an
Yeah, what
unusual
is that?
hat. Yeah.
It's some kind of strange beanie.
Yes.
But yeah, that's Billy Gibbons, all right. Yeah, to give your audience an idea of how serious the Salman Rushdie affair was, is that I think his London publisher agent was attacked, and I think there was a Japanese translator publisher there. He was translating the Satanic Verses, and I think someone came in and murdered him.
Oh, perfect. Wow.
Yeah, so this is like an early. I'm glad you raised it. This is like an early taste of what was to come and what we're seeing today in 2016.
Yeah, and just as an aside, Geert Wilders wound up getting convicted. He's got a $5,300 fine plus attorney's fees for what they say was not freedom of speech at all, but discrimination and racism toward Moroccans.
Oh,
It's so stupid. It's unbelievable. Do you want more Moroccans or less Moroccans? And people are going, well, we'd like to have less Moroccans. So it's like that's automatically racist. It's absolutely insane. It's ridiculous. The Netherlands, populated by Moroccans. I remember, going back to Dylan just for a minute, do you remember when the Brits, they just loved him. But when he got a band, they were like, oh, well, they felt like he'd sold out or something was wrong because instead of just being there by himself with his guitar, he had a band now. And they just thought that was awful, just a travesty.
oh yeah. I think that was at Newport, and that raised a really big controversy in the amongst the dying folky movement.
Yeah.
People such as Pete Seeger and others, they said, "Wow, this is." And Pete Seeger has denied the story that he was upset and cut the sound at the Newport concert. But not just him, but any number of people thought that he had betrayed the honesty and the vision of the folk boom, which was centered around places like Cambridge, Massachusetts, where Harvard is, and MIT, but especially Greenwich Village. But as I alluded to earlier, the folk tradition, even back then in the 60s, was already a romanticized, commercialized version of what was happening in the 20s and 30s. So it's kind of kind of a futile argument, but yeah, that was the big furor when Dylan went electric. He walked on stage with his Fender Stratocaster instead of his Martin 121 model, the one with the small body.
Yeah.
You know, that little Martin guitar, acoustic.
Oh, yeah.
That I think he used that on the first album. But yeah, he walked it with a Fender Strat. By the way, that was there's a story behind that Stratocaster guitar. It's a Fender, as you know. But someone he had left it someplace back east around Woodstock or something, and he left it with someone, and the person really didn't understand the historical importance of that Fender Stratocaster guitar. And it made big news in the guitar magazines when it was put up for sale. And I can't remember, but it commanded an ungodly price. And Dylan didn't want anything to do with it. He didn't reclaim it or said, "Oh, that's mine, give it back to me." He just like the Nobel Prize, he just kind of kept on trucking. He kept on moving down the highway, so to speak.
Yeah, he's something I remember. The one quote that I remember from Bob Dylan was, somebody was talking to him and asked him, I don't even remember what they asked him, but his response was, "I'm just me. I mean, that's all. I'm just me." And that's pretty much all he had to say.
And as a consequence, he's probably one of the most written about figures in popular music, at least in the U.S. I mean, there's tons of books. And by the way, I haven't read the book cover to cover all the way. I'm just kind of sampling, but this one by David Dalton is excellent. It's called "Who's That Man? In Search of the Real Bob Dylan." Right? That's what your point is. Like he says, who am I? I'm just me, right?
Yeah.
But all that has done throughout his whole career is raise more questions and generate more, which I love. I can't get enough of it. I've read almost practically everything that's been written on Dylan, and I welcome even more work on him, criticism, documentaries, and you name it. He's such an important figure, and unlike earlier literary figures, his life has been so well documented because of the era that he's in. I mean, how much do we really know about the private life of, William Faulkner, for example, right? We know a little bit about his adventures in Hollywood when he was an alcoholic screenwriter, not doing much work. And we know, I think his Nobel Prize acceptance speech, I'm talking about Faulkner here, I think it was recorded, but nothing on the level of Bob Dylan. I'm just, in truth, kind of disappointed that we're not going to be able to see that moment in Stockholm when he receives the award and all the accoutrements that go with it. I don't know, he gets probably some kind of medal or something, or a ribbon.
Isn't it something that I just have to say this just because I'm a horrible, mean-spirited individual. But by doing something like this, but because also Juan Manuel Santos will receive an award in Oslo for a deal he signed with the FARC rebels, out of Colombia.
Oh, my gosh.
I can see these two people, Dylan and even Santos. I think that's great because the conflict down there has been going on for so long. But Dylan especially, as far as I'm concerned, by doing this, the Nobel Committee has redeemed itself after just bestowing a Nobel Peace Prize on soon-to-be former President Barack Obama. I never figured out why they just gave him a peace prize for being elected president. If they wanted to give it to the whole country, because America has now symbolized that they're colorblind and everything's going to be fine, well, I'd have been all right with that. But I still don't understand why they gave it to him. I really don't.
Yeah, hopefully an investigative journalist or an insider will give us the information on that. It seems really, really strange. Unless, of course, the Nobel Prize Committee is simply an extension, an arm of this larger system of control that we talk about and write about and scrutinize. We do have to understand that the Nobel Prizes are heavily politicized, and there's a lobbying campaign going on for the different area. I don't know who is lobbying on the part of Dylan, but it could be because the smudge on its reputation because of giving the Peace Prize to Barack Hussein Obama was so heavy. They had to, like you say, redeem themselves by conferring one on Bob Dylan. It's a good choice in this case. there are a few people who are grousing about, well, he's not really a novelist or a short story writer or a poet. Lyrics can't be literature. There's people like that, but they're outnumbered by the people of Salman Rushdie's caliber, down, to people such as myself who started out as fans who think, wow, that's a great choice. And it's also quite an innovative choice because, yeah, he is a music maker. He's a musician. But when you think about it, what is really the source of Western civilization? It's the poetry. It's the epic poets. It's the bards. They might have been pounding out rhythms and harmonies on a different type of instrument, right? But these were people who were part of an oral tradition that really embodied the spirit of their times, of their civilization, of their wars, their struggles, their aspirations. And, we're going back to the Homeric epics, and I'm not comparing Dylan to these individuals, but lyrics are poetry. Lyrics are literature. Poetry, whoever made that statement, I can't remember, is not very well acquainted with poetry because poetry originates in music. They were inseparable. At some point, poetry became printed and put in books and bound and put into the classrooms to bore us to death. But if you took them as music, as lyric poetry with music, then we understand it as literature. And that's what really Dylan, and I don't think he was doing this on purpose, this is what he reminded us of. This is our humanity. This is what he's singing about. And I'm not sure if he gets it on that level. He probably doesn't think it's important. Who knows? But as I said, there are tons of critics, musicians, bloggers now who are obsessed with Dylan. You have Dylanologists who know what he was up to every day of the week since 1963. They have it all cataloged. They know every single detail about his instruments, his bands, his compositions, his music. I'm not on that level, but there are people who are just obsessed with his life. His life has been scrutinized so carefully, so closely by any number of people. I mean, his music is taught in university courses now.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I think it's a guy who teaches at Yale, Sean Willits. He's a professor of, I think, American Studies or English or something. In other words, a quote-unquote legitimate scholar. He has an entire book. He's seen as one of the foremost biographers of Bob Dylan. So a lot of this stuff, John, that we grew up with, we heard at the Boy Scout campfire or at our neighbor kid's house, playing on the record machine or on the AM radio, driving around with our parents who said, God, what is this coming on the radio? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there were AM radios in American-made automobiles back then. And people like Dylan would come on. Remember, this is also when the Beatles were starting to hit. And, of course, Motown was playing on AM radio as well. So this is true Americana, and it's so timely for 2016 because I see a huge revival of Americana, and a lot of it is due to the election of one president-elect, Donald Trump. He's bringing it all back home, John. He's bringing it all back home.
I really think he is. I got to tell you, Dr. Darrell, I got to tell you, I really feel like we just got a pardon from the Almighty. I cannot imagine what life would be like for 4 to 8 years with Hillary Clinton. And there's nothing personal. I don't know the woman. I just know their track record. I've been listening to this since the 90s. I'm over it, Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad. He does make Godfather-like hand gestures all the time. He really does. But I like him. He just seems like a real guy, and he's got some business savvy. So it's going to be interesting. Even that guy, what's his name, Diller? I want to say it's Barry Diller, who swore and declared that he was going to leave the country if Trump was elected. He's going, well, hey, it's going to be a great experiment. Let's do it. Yeah, he's not leaving.
Yeah, a lot of people are circling back and climbing down from their statements about Donald Trump. He took it in stride. I mean, he's used to that type of criticism. I think he has he's a little bit thin-skinned, but I think he has a sense of humor about himself because, he and his family know who the real Donald Trump is, and from what I've read, his employees, the people around him, respect him highly. The other people, I don't know what they're hoping out of Hillary Clinton or worse, but I agree with you completely. It gives me more faith in the direction of this nation, and it also confirms that, yeah, indeed, the United States of America has had God's grace shed upon us. And November of 2016 reaffirms that quite prescient lyrical statement. Gosh, I wonder who penned those words. Hmm?
Yeah, seriously.
Wow. Poetry, the lyrics, ladies and gentlemen, they are so important. They keep coming back to us in our darkest times, in our hours of need, or even when we're sitting around just relaxing. I mean, that's the power of the music, of the lyrics, of the art. And you know what, John? I think a lot of this Americana influenced music is going to start crowding out the Luciferian, satanic, ritualistic garbage that we've been seeing for the past 15 to 20 years.
You know, I just have to compliment you on a couple of things. I mean, you articulate your thoughts so clearly, and you do this, and you in such a way that people are willing to listen. I can't imagine that being at the University of California at Davis. I mean, that's the same place that the guy who invented Kwanzaa teaches at, right?
Oh, no, that's Cal State Long Beach.
Oh, is it? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's Maulanga Karenga, who, by the way, I mean, he's not a friend of mine, but I team taught a course with him.
Did you really? What was that
Oh
like?
yeah, yeah. It was okay. He's on a personal level, he's really fine. But yeah, he invented his own African American holiday, Kwanzaa, and there's a postage stamp. But yeah, I mean, UC Davis, they're still trying to fire me. I'm not going to belabor the point, but yeah, I just got a nasty letter from the Vice Provost of Academic Affairs, Maureen Stanton, and she wants my hide on the wall there, up there with the other coonskins. But I'm a great lecturer. I think I'm a superlative scholar. But John, when just I think any artist or intellectual or any person who has a medical doctor who has something to say, you can do your job too well sometimes.
I've experienced a
Oh, that
little
would
bit
be
of
a
that
great lyric
myself.
for Dylan. Pardon me?
I've experienced a little bit of that myself.
Well, I was kind of hinting at that. Yeah, you're
Say, do you
you're
know
well traveled yourself, are you not?
a little bit? I guess. You know what? I gotta toss this in before I forget it.
Please.
You know, people. I know that the hits, Dylan's hits, but I'll tell you, my favorite songs of Bob. I'll always feel nostalgic when I hear like a Rolling Stone. But I like ISIS. I married
ISIS.
ISIS on the 5th day of May. You know that one. It's just a little three-chord
No.
number.
What song is that?
Oh, we're gonna roll it here in a minute. But
Oh, okay, all right.
yeah, ISIS is a good one. It's just I don't know why, but it's so cowboy 19th century stuff, and it's just so much fun. I like Slow Train
Okay.
Coming. I like You Gotta Serve Somebody, and I
Oh
really
yeah.
like the rendition that Leslie West on guitar from a Mountain, and the inimitable Ozzy Osbourne on vocal.
Mm-hmm.
When they did a version of or cover of Dylan's Masters of War.
Wow. I haven't
Unbelievable.
heard that.
Oh, it's amazing. And
Because War Pigs is a great song, too. War Pigs?
oh yes.
I
Oh
wonder
yes.
if Ozzy was influenced by Masters of War.
Uh, I think he must have
I think
been.
almost everybody after Dylan was influenced by Dylan, so I don't know.
I mean,
But yeah, that's some good stuff. And I think there's going to be a return to lyrical content and away from drum machine programming
yeah, definitely.
and musicianship and acoustic type instruments instead
Well,
of samples. I mean, there'll be that. The people have to go out there and party, go to their warehouses. And by the way, there's a huge fire out here in Oakland where a warehouse burned down, killed a number of people at they call it a rave, whatever that means, but it was a gathering of young people celebrating themselves, their lives. And it goes to show you the power of the music as we've been talking about. They sacrificed their lives because they wanted to be part of this grassroots, organic music, art, political experience. Because these types of events bring in all kinds of people: gay, straight, lesbian, black, Latino, white, Asian, you name it. This is up in California, and the place went down in fire. So that's one of the bad pieces of news that we were hearing at the end of 2016. But yeah, the music. Please go on.
Well, that's really pretty much it. Yeah, that was sad, that deal that happened out there, and of course they say the building was. You got to watch it around those warehouses because you can get in, but sometimes if something happens, it's not real easy to get out. And that was just awful that happened to those kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a robust underground. I mean, it seems like we're being overwhelmed by iTunes and Apple and Clear Channel and all the corporatized culture. But and it's a tragedy. But it's also emblematic of the spirit that people have to organize themselves to create their own scenes, their own musics, their own cultural enrichment without bothering with the state, with the government. And I think one of the outcomes of the tragedy like this is that the government's going to take tighter and more expansive control over these types of gatherings, these communal gatherings. And there's always risks when you go to a baseball stadium or a football match or a large rock concert, for that matter. In any place where you have a large numbers of people, the herd survival instinct can kick in at any moment. So there's always risks there, and young people and old people alike and children should always be aware of their environment and their surroundings so that they're not caught up in such melee as this.
Yeah, I remember
So that's the
shortly.
sad news.
Remember those
Pardon me?
kids that got crushed in that Who concert in Chicago some years ago? A bunch of people got killed just because the crowd went crazy and just started smashing people. I was at a concert in either Dallas or Fort Worth. I think it was Fort Worth at the convention center over there many years ago. And this one guy started pushing. There was a big crush of people going through a hallway. I mean, a bunch of people in there.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy started pushing, and I got just a little taste of what was going to happen in about 15 seconds. It was going to be bad. So I just kind of let some people slip by me, and I got back to where the guy was. I said, "Stop doing that. What do you want to cause another Chicago? What's the matter with you? Don't do that." Because
Mm-hmm.
it was, I mean, it was really gathering. So it was one guy started this and just started pushing, like with an arm around
Yeah.
each person, and then they started pushing. And I tell
Mm-hmm.
you, I could feel the pressure mounting up rapidly. It was like, this is going to go very badly in just a little while. But
It
nothing
doesn't
did
take
happen.
much,
But
no.
I got an understanding of how something like that could happen. You can't imagine how things can get out of control to the point people are actually being crushed. But
Mhm.
I was there for one of those almost events. So
And you also have the early sensation of suffocation.
yes,
Yeah.
completely,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been in situations like that, and I get out of there real quick.
yeah. Well, you have to, or you're not going to make it.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though, something might not happen, but I remove myself from that. And when I go to these places, I always make sure I know where the exits are,
Yeah.
the emergency as well as the main exits. Make sure that they're unblocked and unlocked because sometimes people lock them down because people sneak in, but they should remain open and there should be safety standards. I agree with that, but you got to be careful. And I've seen them at festivals too. I mean, I don't really go to outdoor festivals anymore. They're just not, no matter how well organized they are. They seem to me like they could break out of control at any moment.
Yeah, I thought I
Some
was just
people
getting.
enjoy them, but I don't.
Yeah, I was wondering if I was just becoming, as that ancient expression goes, square, just a bit square, because I just avoid crowds altogether. I really do. I don't. It was okay some years ago. It just seemed a little. Of course, it wasn't, but it seemed a little more controlled and a little bit safer. I'm not sure it was ever safe, but
Hmm.
I'm over it now. I just kind of observe things from afar rather than just wade into the thick of it. You won't catch me out at Burning Man, which reminds me, go into your video, Skin on
Yeah.
Skin, We Hate Burning Man. Why do we hate Burning Man? I've never been to one. I've only seen the
Hmm.
pictures and the reports and then the complaints that people were having too much of a luxury time out there. But
Hmm.
what is that whole thing about anyway?
To me, it's and that's why I did the video. It's a social engineering experiment. It started in San Francisco with people who were involved with the tech business, the budding IT business, and there's probably a little bit of counterculture carryover there, sort of Woodstockian Altamont type of sense of it. It's a utopian experiment, and there are social scientists, because there are at least 3 or 4 books out that have been published by academic types who were participant observers as anthropologists, and they studied the crowd behavior. They studied the interaction, and maybe these scholars were honest in their assessment, or maybe they're just tools. I mean, they're being paid by foundations and private institutions like Yale or Columbia to study human behavior. Human beings being the most studied creature on planet Earth. And I think that information is kicked upstairs to the social and cultural engineers. It goes to the top echelon of the advertising and communication business, the film business people, and they find select artists and writers and say, okay, this is going to be our agenda for the next 5 years. So I think they were studying the utopian impulse in American culture, which has remained strong from the very beginning, even before there was the United States of America. And the social engineers are trying to develop ways of sort of soft control of the population using events like Burning Man or Ozfest or even Live Aid. You know, you can go on as live models of where this energy can be taken, or if it poses a threat to the New World Order centralized government that they're trying to and they will talk about who they are in a moment that are trying to impose on it. But all social science, including Burning Man social science, is not just knowledge for the sake of it. It's going to be used in some fashion. It's typically used against the population under study. So that's what I tried to do with the video. This is what I tell my students. They might not be happy because they're at that age where they want to go to the raves and they want to go to Burning Man and they want to be around each other and wear makeup and devil horns or whatever it is, or uh, electronic dance music is big. I don't know if it's going to continue to remain at the pace it is. There's even these concerts now where you just have earphones or earbuds, and the music is beamed to you without coming over the speakers. So the scene itself is dead quiet, but everybody's hearing the same music through earphones, earpieces.
Hmm.
Silent concerts. So there's always these different wrinkles that are going on here, but we're being studied very, very carefully by the global media conglomerates because they haven't figured us out completely. They think they have a big handle, you know, a good handle on us, on humanity, but we really fooled them in the case of the recent presidential election. You know, they think they have us down, sussed out and down controlled to an algorithm. You know, just like they managed to game the Wall Street in the city of London, the different trades through algorithms, right? But no, human beings, mankind, humankind, we almost have a new wrinkle out there. It's our creativity, and there's always these people who say, "Hey, let's rent a warehouse and just get the best underground DJs here, and we'll bring our records, and we'll just, you know, have this party until dawn." You know, there's that impulse there. It's anarchism, I guess. And you have these so-called advanced societies like our own. The leadership wants to be able to control every single variable in our lives. And we're seeing pushback on the grassroots level. And I think the election of Donald Trump is emblematic of that pushback amongst the population. By the way, I want to take the time to state that it's programs like Caravan to Midnight, hosted by John B. Wells, that have had the sort of corrosive effect amongst above average intelligence listeners, your subscribers to Caravan to Midnight. It's had a corrosive effect on these authoritarian structures that have been holding us down for the past 20 years. So I thank you, John Wells. Thank you, Mr. Wells. And there's other shows I mean, there's tons of them now. InfoWars being one, the Alex Jones Show probably being at the top of the list of MVPs. But you're on that list as well, and I thank you for that.
Well, thank you for saying that. It it really isn't a job. It's really been more of a mission to do it. For 20 years ago, I had a little cassette recorder, and I was just recording some observations at the time. Just things that were irritating me about the direction that various things were taking, and I never did anything with those. But it was just the beginning of. It's almost like I sang in the shower long enough. I decided to go ahead and go to the recording studio and knock out a couple of tunes.
I did.
I just wouldn't do it any other way because after having been in the mainstream media apparatus for 25 years and gotten some blowback, for example, a big outfit, the biggest outfit in Georgia, is a 3-letter TV station, and I knew the person who had gone there to be promotions manager. And it was like this person wanted me to go ahead and be the voice of that station, but that gig went away because over this thing that Janet Reno initiated, along with the Clintons, this burn down of the compound at Waco, Texas. They submitted some copy for me to read, and I was doing it. It was a real-time deal over ISDN. And I'll never forget the copy. A madman claiming to be Christ wages a bloody battle with federal agents in Waco, Texas. And I said, I have to take exception to this. First of all, he didn't ever say that he was Jesus. That's number one. And number two, how about this? Federal shock troops dressed like Nazi Waffen SS attack church, killing women and children. Why don't you run that one instead? As you can imagine, that didn't go over very well. So,
no. John, you're a troublemaker just like me. So
yeah.
You got canned after, from that job, I assume, or it started to go downhill.
Yeah. Well, I just consider myself to be I'm the Lord's blunt instrument, one of them. Okay.
Well, I kind of, I'm not on the same stature. I was watching this interview with Don Felder, who was with the Eagles. Guitar. He played the guitar solo on Hotel California, by the way. He's a really great musician out of Florida. And, he was with the Eagles for over 20 years, and then they fired him.
Yeah.
So that's my situation. I'm with the University of California, Davis for over 20 years, and they're firing me. So, but, as proven by your career, there's life after corporate life, right?
No, wait a minute. Did you just say they're firing you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's all but official. They're putting me through the process, but I think the fix is in. So, yeah, this is the second time around. This has been going on for 2015 because, as we said, you can do your job too well.
Well, let me ask you
I'm
this.
trying to keep it light, just talk about, Dylan and the popular culture and whatnot. But, yes.
Well, why would they do such a stupid?
When they hand me a script, if I don't agree with it, I'm not going to follow it, and I'll put my own little 2 cents in. And if it's damaging to the New World Order globalist establishment, I talk about how these social scientists go to Burning Man and record them and document it and write it all up, and they have scientists and biologists and genome specialists and so-called nutritionists all doing this at not just my institution, but all over the place. And if you do not subscribe 100% to that technotronic world view where we ourselves are the people who are the slave population, they don't want to hear that. Their business is the business of enslaving human minds, not freeing them, not liberating them. And it took me a long time to figure that out. And it's taken them a long time to catch up with me. But, that's fine. Yeah. That's where I'm at. But, I return to Dylan. I return to the artists, the writers. I'm reading, which I'll talk about in a moment, reading different forms of literature to glean information from them, as well as do my own work. Graphic novels, as well as music, have been a very, very important tool of resistance, not just for me, but the people who are doing this kind of work. So as long as I'm connected with these creative forces and listening to alternative media, getting the real news and analysis from programs such as Caravan to Midnight, then I'm okay.
Well, this is extraordinary. It's, of course, this is not the first time that this has happened. You know, there's something in me, and I suspect that it may be the same thing that's in many, many other people. We really don't want to believe. You know, we look at this stuff like this New World Order stuff, and we see what the big communications companies do, and we see how they kind of spin things a certain direction. It was never more clearly illustrated than in the behavior of the mainstream media over this election of Donald Trump. They shot themselves in both feet and backside and the ear and the armpit and everywhere. They just riddled themselves with shots.
Absolutely.
It was just amazing. So, I mean, this should really send a message to people that even though we really can't quite believe that there is a New World Order agenda afoot, there is one, but it's not, and if there is, then it must be unstoppable, but it's not unstoppable. If you give them enough rope and you pray every once in a while, you'll find that the Almighty will reveal his sense of humor and go, let me show you how small a problem this really is. And the media, they're like, oh, well, I mean, this guy, I keep going back to Diller because he's so vitriolic, and he gets that unbelievable look of, I just hate everything about this conservative bunch of blah, blah. And he's going, well, it might be all right. It's a fantastic experiment. I'm excited to be a part of this plan. It's like, you know what? You're just as disingenuous now as you were the other day. You know, who do you think you're kidding? I guess he's hoping that we'll have short memories and forget what he said before the election. But it's amazing to see. This just seems to be the way of things. Like you were saying, it's possible to do your job a little bit too well. How many times has that happened to people?
Oh, yeah.
All the
it's
time.
Happened to tons of people.
Except they're the ones that are remembered, and the other ones that towed the line are forgotten. So
that's very true. That's very true, and it's not something that I know. I know you're not ego-driven, and you're not in it for the fame and glory. Neither is Dylan, and most people who do leave some sort of legacy behind, intellectual, artistic, recorded, painting, whatever. They do it because they're interested in human freedom. We're interested in liberation. And getting news, information, lyrics out, or thoughts, or exchanging ideas, or sharing pleasures of the past through our current conversation. That's irrepressible. That is truth in itself. That's speaking truth right there. And I don't call it truth to power because I don't recognize the power. We are the power. But that is truth to humanity. Being enacted every single day of our lives to our betterment. And that's irrepressible, even though we have neuroscientists who are trying to biochemically and electronically damage our minds and our brains. And that's, by the way, one of the topics, the huge topics of this New World Order theory for students, because that's the big gold rush right now in academic research and funding, and they really want to rewire us, ladies and gentlemen, not just our genetics, but our neurons. It's really dangerous, and they're starting with soft approaches, right? They'll get us through entertainment, through distractions, through sports, and through the music, as we've already alluded to, and then the hammer will come down. Then it will come down. It'll come down hard, and many of us will wonder, gee, how did that unfold? What happened? Well, you better listen to the poets. You have to listen to Bob Dylan and others, and writers and novelists, the comic book artists, the graphic artists out there, because they are the early warning system for, they're the guardians of our civilization. They're on the watchtower. They're all along the watchtower, and they're watching over us. So let's give a close listen to their message.
I think that's very well said. I'll tell you what, we're going to pause for about 5 minutes, if that's okay with you. Get a glass of water and a leg stretch, and let's resume in, I think I said 5. Would that be all right?
5 minutes is fine. Thank you, John.
All right, we'll have a beautiful musical interlude, some music from Bob Dylan. Stand by. All right, that was very nice. We're going to hear nothing but Dylan music today, I think that's appropriate. You know, I was so sad to hear about what happened to Keith Emerson of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Actually, you heard about him checking himself out.
Oh yes, just the a day or two ago.
Yeah, it's just it's terrible that it got to him so bad that people were posting things like, "Oh, I wish he'd just quit playing." You know, it's like,
Really?
hey pal, let's hear a couple of your songs, okay? Before you start
Yeah.
criticizing Emerson. It's just I don't understand why people are like that. You know, I wanted to ask you about graphic novels. Do you know what I actually did recently? I may have told you this already, but I actually purchased the entire hardbound collection of Zap comics.
Really?
Yeah,
Robert Crumb, right?
that's it. The,
Hmm.
the
Amongst others, but he's the main one, I think. Yeah. You got a hardbound edition? Was that just released?
You know, I was looking for some of that stuff. I don't know how long it's been out, but actually, I found it on eBay of all things. Apparently, the author is not in the best of health, and so they're doing little things for him and so forth. And they wanted to offer this hardbound collection. I think there are 6 or 7 or 8 volumes in this thing, uh, and again, it's everything that he did through that whole Zap series. But
Hmm.
I got to tell you, it wasn't cheap. But I wouldn't not do it just to have that Americana. And the
Oh,
thing is,
absolutely.
and you know, it's the rise of the graphic novel. I'm trying to remember. Forgive me, folks, but we're on episode 650. What? 655, and I just can't remember who the graphic novelist was at this moment, but I will figure it out. But they have a new politically inspirational graphic novel out that's quite good, and I'll make sure and mention it before the end of the program.
Okay.
But it's almost like revolution time again. It's almost like the clock's been rolled back to 1968, you know?
Yes.
I mean, there really is something in the air, as Thunderclap
The
Newman
spring of
wrote.
1968. Wasn't
Yeah,
that Thunderclap Newman,
it was.
Revolution in the Air?
That's it.
Yes, and I think that song was produced by Pete Townsend, if I'm
Is,
not mistaken.
did not know
Thunderclap
that.
Newman.
Oh, that's
Pardon?
fantastic. I didn't know that.
Oh, I think I'm going from memory, but I think Pete Townsend had a hand in the Thunderclap Newman song. This was, ladies and gentlemen, a very, very popular song on FM radio by Thunderclap Newman. He's an English artist. But yeah, he says revolution in the air. He wasn't talking about necessarily just political revolution, but just a general change in zeitgeist, if you will, which I think was overall quite positive. And I say that because there are some people out there, some internet trolls and whatnot, and amateurs who can do nothing but denigrate the 1960s. And I don't talk about the 60s in such a nostalgic or romantic fashion just because I grew up through a lot of it. But objectively, I think historically, it's a pivotal decade. And as Mr. Wells alludes to, I think we're entering into another such phase here in 2016, 2017. I agree with that completely. I'm very excited about it.
Well, this is really interesting. In 1969, Pete Townsend, The Who's guitarist, was the catalyst behind the formation of the band. What band? Thunderclap Newman. The concept was to create a band to perform songs written by drummer and singer Speedy Keen, who had written Armenia City in the Sky, the first track on The Who Sell Out. Townsend recruited jazz pianist Andy Thunderclap Newman, a friend from art college, and 15-year-old Glaswegian guitarist Jimmy McCullough, who subsequently played lead guitar in Paul McCartney's Wings from 74 to 77, died of a heroin overdose in 79. Oops. So,
That's sad.
yeah, he
15 years old, he was already playing with in the studio with Thunderclap Newman. That's what's so great about rock and roll. You could be Richie Valens, 15 years old, 16 years old, and boom, you're there. Young Man Blues, like Mose Allison, which Pete Townsend later covered with his group. Like everything's taken already, right? All the spots are occupied. This is what the millennials are claiming about uh, baby boomers such as myself. Like get out of the way. We're coming through. Yeah, come on through, please. It's your turn. but you need to build on a solid foundation. You know, you got to read the back issues of Zap Comics, which, by the way, I used to buy the original ones. They used to have, and I know you know this, John, but for your audience, they used to have these little independent stores called head shops, and they would sell everything but marijuana. They'd sell paraphernalia, psychedelic posters, exotic clothes from India, perfumes and scents, and you name it. But they also would sell so-called underground comic books. That's what they were called. So you can go in there and buy Zap Comics. You can find artists like Spain Rodriguez and gosh, you name it. I'm sure there are scholarly tomes being written about that type of art. But I think that's kind of where the current graphic novel, a lot of its roots draw from that early late 60s, 70s independent comics, because these are people who grew up with the old Superman and Batman comics. And I wanted to ask you, John, when you were a kid, or maybe still now, did you read Mad Magazine?
I read Mad Magazine religiously.
I thought so.
What, me worry? Oh, yeah.
Huh?
What, me worry?
Yes. Do you remember that famous cover with El Jefe, El Líder Máximo, Fidel Alejandro Castro Cruz on the cover?
Yes.
Oh, that's a class. They were spoofing this kind of stuff decades ago. It came out of the leadership of William F. Gaines. And I'm studying him now. I'm revisiting Mad Magazine, John.
Yeah, well, why not? They say if you want or at least I say it, if you want a new idea, read a really old book.
Absolutely.
Yeah. By the way, you're entirely correct. In 1969, Pete Townsend, he produced that single, Something in the Air, and they changed it. It was originally titled Revolution, but they changed it to Something in the Air to avoid confusion with the Beatles song. And Townsend actually played bass on it. Let's see. Bijou Drains is what he called himself. Bijou Drains. Nice. So.
And these wacky kids, they all met each other at art college. This was the people who weren't going to go anywhere in society, supposedly. They shunted them off into art school. People like Eric Clapton and Pete Townsend. Imagine the fun that they were having there.
Yeah, well.
And look at what's going on in the schools now. They're protesting nothing. They're protesting identity. They could be making music. They can be making art. They can be making love. They can be doing all this great stuff in life. But no, the social engineers who've been spying on Burning Man and other types of youth culture events, they've turned this back on us and fed us a bunch of garbage. But as we've discussed, that's changed now.
Yeah.
But do you remember Spy versus Spy?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, this was done by, and this fits in with the death of El Líder Máximo, Fidel Castro Cruz, but his name was Antonio Prohias, and he was a Cuban American. He escaped Castro's communist utopia. And he went into the office of William Gaines with his drawing, because he was already a political cartoon. I think this is one of the reasons why he had to leave Cuba, because he did his job too well. He was a great cartoon. So he went to New York City, and he had a portfolio, and William Gaines saw it. And you can imagine what their editorial office was like, right? It was probably like a frat house. And William Gaines said, yeah, okay, talk to so-and-so. And then he left with a check right on the spot.
Really?
Yeah, and then for several years, I don't know how long his career at Mad Magazine, we got to, every month, John, we got to read Spy versus Spy. And ladies and gentlemen, there was no words in it. It was all pantomime.
Gosh.
And it was usually, sometimes it appeared in the margins of the magazine, or maybe there's some other stuff as well. But yeah, there's a collection there. It's called The Complete Casebook, Spy versus Spy by Antonio Prohias, and there's a little bit of biographical information provided by his daughter and critics and other people who appreciate and value his work. But it's a perfect time to mention his contribution to the resistance against dictatorship in our hemisphere.
The dictatorship
it hasn't ended,
in this
but
hemisphere.
Certainly, El Líder Máximo is gone.
No kidding. It would not be complete without a mention, at least, of the sometimes rather raunchy Bent comics. Do you remember them?
Kind of, yeah. There was bent and there was cracked.
Yeah. Maybe it was Cracked.
I think it was cracked. But you know what? And I hate to sound partisan in this, but I could never understand why people would read cracked when there was Mad. It was kind of like it tried to compete against Mad Magazine, but I never ever ran across anybody who actually read cracked.
Well, I don't want to wax juvenile here, but there was an important life lesson. I've been trying to find this comic book, but I can't. And what it is it's a plumber's helper pleading with its owner, who is about to flush himself down the toilet in furtherance of committing suicide. And the plumber's helper fails to do this. It's got that little face on it and arms and legs, the like Mickey Mouse gloved hands and like that. And it's the sweat beads are coming off its head. And it's like, don't do it, boss. And he's like, I'm going to end it all. So he does. And what an amazing life lesson. This person flushes himself down the commode. And he winds up in this room with three other guys. It's just this room. He goes through all this plumbing, and and they all look like little brown snowmen, and and one of them is real grumpy, and so the new arrival asks these two guys. So there are four of them in there now. I ask them, "How long you guys been there?" "Oh, I've been here for a couple of years." "Well, why did you do it?" "Well, my marriage failed," and the other guy said, "Well, my business failed," and all that. And so they're looking, and the other guy is real grumpy. He's just bitter, and he's not saying much. But he says, "What's this hole on the floor?" He goes, "Well, we don't know." "What do you mean you don't know? You just sat here in this room and you haven't bothered to find out where the hole in the floor goes?" Well, no, we're afraid. And I mean, what if it's worse than this?" And he's going, "Well, how can it be any worse than this? We should reinvigorate our spirit of adventure. I mean, maybe something good will happen from this. But we can't just stare at the hole on the floor." Well, the grumpy guy gets sick of it and kicks all three of them down the hole, and tells him get out of here. But he uses that word that starts with a T, that would describe the brown snowman suit. It's legal for use on radio. Mike Savage used to do it. I haven't heard him do it much lately, but. They get squeezed through all this plumbing, and then they come, just a manhole cover just bursts open on Main Street, and here they come. It's Mac, the man behind the counter, and Al, the man who services your car. They're back, and they're all doing that keep on trucking waltz, so they've been redeemed, all because they had the courage to go down the unknown hole in the bottom of their cell, and they reemerged into a real life once again. So it's like, for such a ridiculous comic, this really has yielded a life lesson to where, when you feel like it can't get any worse and you feel like checking yourself out, you get a reprieve and you find out that life's not so bad after all. It's it was really rather good,
And it's cinematic. As you're relating the scenario, I'm thinking of a movie reeling through my. This isn't Cracked magazine?
It was either Cracked or Bent. I haven't been able to find it.
Okay. Well, see, I guess I didn't give it enough credit, but that's a pretty incredible literary statement, that voyage there. It kind of reminds me of that scene in Trainspotting where the guy is a junkie and he kind of falls into a toilet when he's strung out. And he goes through a sort of a spacey devolution, I guess, if I recall correctly. But yeah, it's and ostensibly this material is for teenagers or for kids, right?
Yeah, supposedly.
But it's giving us very adult lessons about humanity, about life, about culture, about just persevering and struggling against these structures. And the reason I asked you, and I thought you would be a Mad freak as well, Mad Magazine freak, is because I've come to conclude all these little elements, not little elements, but influences like Dylan to Mad Magazine and the comics of yore, including the underground comics. They really played a huge part in not just my personal life, but also my professional life. I went on to get a degree in popular culture, a master's degree, but always I return to the well. And I keep drinking from this nourishment of the past, the present, and the future, because I think there's going to be some incredible art coming down the pike as well, in keeping with the turnabout in our political fortunes, our saving grace as we've just experienced it. And we've seen how sick and depraved so-called modern art has become through this woman, Maria Abramovich,
Oh,
who,
yeah. The spirit
her
cooker.
work, and I have the book, by the way, Walking Through Walls. I mean, she's one of many that publicly funded and privately subsidized artwork is promoting, not just to the hoi polloi, but also to the riffraff now. I mean, it has a trickle down effect, and it starts appearing in these these shows by Jay-Z and Beyonce and Kanye West. I mean, that type of, and Madonna, of course, this type of work. Lady Gaga was one of her big fans, right? Maria Abramovich. And I'm sure her designers and her producers took some elements of that and put it in her live show or in her videos. But, John, the good news is I think the American public and the young people in particular are going to start moving away from that.
I certainly hope so.
A lot of them, they were just following whatever was presented to them by MTV or Time Warner. But nope, they're going to start doing their own organic culture again.
It was really interesting. We had Katy Perry's father come on the program one time, but by the time it gone along a little ways, I was beginning to wonder really kind of why we did, because he did not want to talk about Katy, So it's like, okay, he's kind of a biker minister guy, and he's a nice guy, but he didn't want to talk about Katy because I guess we'd already found out pretty much all we needed to know about her at that moment in time. But I don't want to be Mr. Wet Blanket either, but I think Adolf Hitler went to art school too.
Yes.
So art has many forms, and it really has been twisted and perverted to the point. I mean, I got caught up in 2 or 3 of these TV series. Fringe, I really think quite a lot of. And then Ray Donovan, of course. I ask a Hollywood guy, is there something wrong with me that I like Ray Donovan? But but the latest one that I got into, it's been around a while, it's called Gotham. And it is just ongoing, rolling violence of every conceivable type. It's not as bad as Game of Thrones or some of the other ones, but it's really out there. And I'm wondering, Doc, sometimes I just wonder, what is it that we're really being subjected to here? Because it's, as you say, it seems like this sort of warped art with the Gagas and, Madonna looking like she's ready to do her the remake of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, in this this latest outfit she's got on, and all these people talking about all this. Why are they in such despair over this Donald Trump victory? I mean, I think they protest a little bit. Methinks they protest a little bit too much, and it seems as though in all their protestations they are revealing that this New World Order thing is not some pipe dream that's being dreamt by a few sort of wickedly inclined philosophers that have some sway over certain areas of society. This is really an agenda. This is a hardcore, serious agenda. And we're being bombarded with, this latest thing about, I'm all over the place now, but this latest craze about talking about fake news. And yet, it's been spoken of by a few outlets, this one included, that in 2013, the U.S. government pretty much just announced that it's completely legal to propagandize our citizens once again, even though they've been doing it since, for at least the last 100 years. But but now they've made it official. Yes, it's legal to hit you with propaganda. And
Right.
I wonder where we're going to be 10 years from now.
And then you have Professor Cass Sunstein talking about cognitive infiltration, right? Yes. But it's not
Cognitive
working.
infiltration.
I guess it failed. Ultimately, it failed. And even the Washington Post recently had to back off of their statement about so-called fake news. I think they were afraid of being sued by people who were named as being perpetrators of so-called fake news. But I think most of us know. Your audience definitely would know that news outlets like the Washington Post are part of this Project Mockingbird that the CIA was sponsoring. I mean, all that is mainstream history now. We know this. The mighty Wurlitzer, as it was called by the CIA, the giant organ of sounds, a panoply of harmonies and dissonance, was an orchestra, a keyboard that they played. They thought they played it well, but these people are arrogant. They're so impressed by their own genius, their own talent. They don't realize that people, coming out of a place like Hibbing, Minnesota, hanging around a bunch of bohemians in Greenwich Village can come up with anything that'll just like stop all that cognitive infiltration in its tracks and bring down mighty CIA organs like the Washington Post or the New York Times. Right? We know that the so-called alternative media now is the mainstream media for most Americans. And these people are driving, the establishment people are driving themselves crazy trying to figure it out. They want to do studies on this. They have to send their people down in there and study how these operations work, like from the inside out, like Burning Man. And they'll be back. They'll be back. But so will we. I mean, we're not going away. We've never been away. We've been swamped. We've been overwhelmed for a long time, maybe 20 years by now. But simultaneously, and again, I'm not just trying to curry favor with you, John, but caravan to midnight. Independent-minded people with independent dreams and ideas, and implement programs, shows, publishing, comics included, you name it. YouTube, right? They came back in droves, and they came back with such energy and creativity that was unstoppable. So that's a victory. I know we're always being treated and exposed to negative news, and the '60s sucked, and the Jim Morrison was a psyop because his dad was an admiral in Vietnam, all that stuff. No. We've never really gone away. We've always been a critical mass. But now, the audience, the demographic, if you will, the population that are now woke, as they say in the world of hip hop,
right,
has expanded way beyond the control of the algorithmic boys. These IT guys, the quants of Wall Street, and these people with PhDs in physics who figured out elaborate mathematical models that no one could figure out, just so they can steal tons of money from pension funds, from ordinary hardworking Americans, to put it in their accounts. Okay, we know that. And it was independent media primarily, including Breitbart, including Drudge, print media. That's what I call print media these days, that helped us think through and understand what this is all about. And my job for the past 10 years or so, or more than that now, has been to bring that sensibility to the younger generation, saying, okay, this is what it's really like. This is what they're teaching you K through 12 and at the university. Some of it's true, a lot of it's valuable, but I have something else to present to you that you can run with, and perhaps in your profession, your career, you can make use of this and help make America great again and build the world up to a peaceful world order instead of one that's built on destruction and death and decay.
There is an element of that Thunderclap Newman song. I think starts out with "Pass out the arms and ammo," and nobody really wants that, but
no.
I think we're tired of being threatened by these people. I think we're tired of being threatened with the imposition of some strange order for living, complete with a code to live by that we really don't approve of. And had no say in it. I think we're just sick of it. I think we're just sick of all of it. I think that's why the country just so resoundingly rejected Hillary Clinton. And they keep trying to say, oh, no, we really didn't lose. It's like, really, look at the election map. You see all that red? That's not you, Like, what's that, watermelon, Ryan? Look on the scoreboard and see who's behind. You, fool. So I can't help it. Now, let me ask you this.
mentioned the term code. I mean, speech code? How
Yeah,
can
really.
speech be coded? How can you draw a boundary around words and thoughts and sentences and ideas? I mean, they've been trying to force speech codes down my gullet where I work for the past 10 years. They call it principles of civility. Now, part of living any civilization, in a society, is a little bit of incivility, a little bit of arrogance, a slight bit of cheek, such as the art school boys practiced
Yeah.
because they wouldn't fit anywhere else in British society. So they made revolution instead. And that's where I see our young people going. You know, what happened in November 2016? It's because that's the spirit of the American people, right? We are the city upon the hill. And I agree with you. We just dodged the bullet on that one. And I'm so grateful that we didn't slip further down into the authoritarian slash totalitarian poop chute down there. You know, that would have been really, really dangerous for us. I'm not saying we're out of the woods yet, but I feel a little bit more comfortable that President-elect Trump is already on the job and implementing his vision, which is the vision of the majority of the American people and the majority of people in Western Europe and in Japan
Yeah.
and in South Korea.
Yeah, I think they were waiting for us to do something to redeem
Yes.
ourselves, because I think we had some really bad PR going for about 8 years, longer than that, with the last term of certainly the second term of George W. Bush was not all that wonderful. You know what I mean? Everybody was sick
Yeah, I
of it.
mean, John, it was getting so bad that the president of the Philippines, Duterte, just told Obama to just, you know what, take a flying leap, right? When he's changed his tune now. He's making nice with President-elect Donald Trump, right? So we're on the way back. I think our demise has been celebrated prematurely by China and other even our allies. You know, people in France and in Great Britain, they have a lot of resentment towards the United States and America for at least 2 or 3 generations. They have kind of a love-hate, I guess, relationship. But we're back. We're back in business. You know, U.S. Steel wants to create jobs in America. I mean, that's not something that I even dreamt about. You know, but they're making noise. Maybe it's PR now, but at least they're making statements like, yeah, we're going to create jobs here. This is U.S. Steel. I
Yeah,
thought we had lost that industry permanently to South Korea and China, but no,
it's beautiful. It really is.
it's
And
beautiful.
how about this fellow with SoftBank and his $50 billion investment?
May I talk a little bit about Mr.
Please.
Son-san,
Yeah,
Masayoshi Son?
yeah,
SoftBank, yes, it's kind of an unusual name for
yeah.
a
I was
bank.
wondering about that.
It's better than hard bank, but
Yes.
I think it's the Japanese sort of take on English. Soft has a good connotation there, as opposed to here. You know, if you're soft, you're weak, right? In American English, but there, so soft is to be resilient and but strong like a bamboo. You know, you have some give. So it had that's I think where that term came from. But yeah, I was doing some research, and I have some good news about SoftBank. And the good news, of course, is that Son-san pledges $50 billion that he will invest in the United States. And then we have President-elect Trump tweeted now, and you know, Alec Baldwin's making fun of him on Saturday Night Live, but he tweeted that this would translate into about 50,000 American jobs. I mean, that's music to our ears. Okay, that's the good news. That's the good news, right? There's money here. Now here's the bad news, and I'm presenting this. This is an exclusive. This is a scoop. This bit of analysis, just a short bit of analysis, John. This is an exclusive for your audience in Caravan to Midnight. The bad news is that Son Sang stated that he wants to invest that $50 billion in robotics, artificial intelligence, and even telepathy.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so what that means is that if he gets his way, and he has a 300-year plan, he's serious about that. You know, I think people in East Asia, China included, right, have a different concept of time. For us, it's like every quarter, every 3 months, there's something that or in the fashion industry, high fashion, haute couture, it's 6 months. But in places like China, Zhou Enlai famously was asked, well, what do you think about, the American Revolution? He said, well, it's, too early to tell yet. The results aren't really in yet. So anyway, Sonsan has a 300-year plan, and it's about really, when you want to think about it, it's about eliminating the human species in favor of sentient robots, AI, and nanotechnology.
Yeah, what do you make of all these? You've got to be right, because I mean, look at all this. Look at this fixation on sex bots, and
Exactly.
and they're rolling that out at the same time. Isn't it interesting? We began to hear about that just about the time Westworld was in production,
Right.
and so it hits the pages first as almost like a what do you call it, a forward.
Predictive programming.
Yeah, yeah, it's strange. And then right on the Drudge Report, it says, Matt Drudge, he's very evil because he posts links. People talk about him being an evil genius, like he wrote everything that's on the report. It's links to other news channels. That's all. Corporate giant to replace 2,000 workers with robots. That $15 an hour to hand people, that's a sack with a couple of burgers in it and some fries that taste kind of like potatoes. That's going. That's apparently that's going away to robotics, kiosks, and stuff like that. So, and then right above this thing about corporate giant to replace 2,000 workers with robots. Oh, paper. Trump era confronts organized labor with gravest crisis in decades. So it's just strange. It says here, Andrew Puzder, a fast food executive who has opposed additional overtime pay for workers and expressed skepticism about increasing the minimum wage, followed up with a pair of Twitter messages Wednesday evening in which Trump attacked an Indiana union leader who had criticized him, saying the official had done a terrible job representing workers. So, I mean, who are the workers exactly? We keep hearing about the workers, but I'm not really sure I know who they are. What jobs are the workers doing exactly? What does that even mean?
Yeah. And as you and I know, and many others know, it's been the so-called organized labor that's been in bed with the globalists and the corporatists to systematically destroy the American and the global working class and the middle class by extension. It's the middle class that's now being targeted because the American middle class has been decimated. Hope it recovers, but it's still in the balance whether that's going to happen or not. But it's organized labor. And by the way, just as an aside, it's been organizations, and I've traced this down, like the UFW, the United, or the UAW, the United Auto Workers, that are funding a lot of these social justice warrior programs because they don't have a constituency anymore. They got rid of them. The people that they used to represent, who were steel workers and automobile manufacturing workers, are gone. So all they have are these vulnerable GLBTQ and whatever identitarian group they have in the university, organize them on that basis, you see. So it kind of fits in there. Those are the new workers there, and they're going to be non-productive. That's why they were grieving so deeply when their icon, Hillary Clinton, didn't make it, because it wasn't so much Clinton, it was the way of life that they thought they were going to win, which is one of living on a reservation, right?
Yeah.
Living in a little bit an enclave, in a small living space, not being able to drive, and having a little debit card with their caloric allowance on it. They've all been primed by this, and they've been primed by people overseas, primarily in Japan. Talk about predictive programming, and this is why Son-san, who just is pledged to invest $50 billion in the United States economy, that's why his previous business has set the foundation for where he's taking us into what Ray Kurzweil calls the singularity. You've heard that concept, right? Ray Kurzweil, the futurist?
Oh, yes.
Right. This is the merging of sentient humanity with the machine, with AI, with robotics. And Son-san is a big fan of Mr. Ray Kurzweil and the singularity. And he refers, this is phrase, Song says that the singularity is a quote unquote paradigm shift for him. He's completely bought into it. So when you weigh that vision of a dystopian, technotronic, human devoid landscape with the $50 billion investment, I think we're getting a raw deal because we're not going to be around to enjoy it, at least subsequent generations, if Son gets his way. But he won't for the reasons that we've already discussed. There are kids out there who are 8, 9, 10 years old reading underground publications that we don't even know about, going to clubs, teenagers, young people going to warehouses unauthorized, listen to music that they make, who are, and the Pete Townsends of the present, the Thunderclap Newmans of the now, who are out there gearing up to resist the singularity. And me, as a senior member of this floating parade of anarchists and ill-tempered, bad-behaving people, I'm going to try to mentor these people. I'm going to find them, and I'm going to mentor them and say, hey, let's check this out. Let's listen to Thunderclap Newman on YouTube. Dig this. Hey, did you know that Pete Townsend was making more money when he was attending art college than his professor, and his professor saw his pay stub that he was making on gigs and said, yeah, you better quit school. You're making more money being with the high numbers. And that other troublemaker, that panel beater, that was a body shop man known as Roger Daltrey.
Yeah.
Right?
Isn't that a panel beater? Isn't that amazing?
That's another trade that disappeared, didn't it?
Well, not in my neighborhood.
Plastic cars.
We still got panel beaters around here.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and in fact, they're the ones you go to if you really want your hot rod restored properly.
Oh, absolutely.
And most of them are from south of the border, and they'll just sit there for hour after hour, and they don't care. They don't. I think they actually like what they're doing. Is that an interesting concept? Yeah.
Yes. And you know what? Those are groups as well that are pure Americana, and whether they know it or not, beating those panels is an affirmation of American technology and automobile culture against the anti-automobile culture that we're being schooled in. Not us, you and me. We're too far gone, but the younger kids are saying, yeah, automobiles are bad. They're going to be gone pretty soon, and we're going to go around in automated transportation, and it's going to be such a great revolution in humanity. We're also going to start living in 500 square feet boxes in San Francisco with other people. At the same time, it's going to be the THX 1138 scenario all over again.
You know what? You took the thought right out of my brain. You really did. That was Lucas's first film, wasn't it?
It was. I think it started as a student film at USC Cinema.
Yeah.
Then they invested some money in it, and it still was a quote-unquote low-budget movie. And that was Robert Duvall, wasn't it?
Yes.
It's the first time I saw, Robert Duvall, wow, who's this guy? And he's another guy. But if there's a bio on Robert Duvall, I got to read it, because that's a fascinating, interesting character and individual.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to him one day. I think we'll just see if we can make that happen. Maybe he'll make the time for it, because
oh my gosh,
he is just he and Jon Voight and
yes.
James Woods. I thought it was very interesting that James Woods and Jon Voight have been really outspoken conservatives out in the L.A. Hollywood area, and of course there's blowback for that. I mean, I experienced blowback just being from Texas in L.A. when George Bush was president. I'm serious. You were just automatically everything that you represented everything that they don't like politically and philosophically. But I thought it was interesting, speaking of Ray Donovan earlier, that both of those actors, Jon Voight wound up they're going to do a 5th season of Donovan. He's been there for all 4 so far. He'll be there for the 5th one. And James Woods also had a featured role in it too. But I thought it was very interesting that those 2 Hollywood pariahs wound up on the same program. But Woods has even said, I don't expect to work in Hollywood ever again. I mean, is it even possible to get an idea what people think, what's it going to look like in 10 years? And they think, well, he's shining cities on a hill, and incredible new technology. It's like, it doesn't seem like from the consumer standpoint, we haven't invented very many new things because cars still have mostly four wheels on them. They get more and more horsepower. So we've really just sort of improved everything that's been around forever. But I just wonder, do you have any thoughts on what this American culture may look like in 2026?
2026.
Yeah.
Well, that's some futurological forecasting there. Well, for one, we do know that by that period that you're talking about, that the globalists, the planners, the social engineers want to see a drastically reduced human population, and it's going to ostensibly be replaced by the robots, the sentient robots, and AI and nanotechnology. This is where they're steering us. So there might not be as much of a robust human population to begin with. Now the problem is that the people that the globalists are promoting as the advance guard in the destruction of Western civilization, these people are highly fertile and they're highly invested in quote unquote traditional family. They want to procreate. They don't want abortion. They want to breed the Western societies out of existence. So how are they going to deal with them? Right. That's going to be their challenge after they use them as a hammer against the West. So I don't know. There are actors, but one name I'd like to add to that honor roll of conservative and libertarian thinking actors such as Jon Voight and James Wood is the writer, screenwriter, playwright, and now film director David Mamet. David Mamet, M-A-M-E-T. I think he comes out of Chicago originally, but I think he lives in L.A. He's made several films by now. Excellent films. I don't know if his career has suffered, but he's written a book. I can't remember the title of it, and he stated that he was once, sort of a left liberal, like a lot of people in the arts community, like a lot of musicians, directors, and writers. That's kind of understandable because you're on the cutting edge of your culture, society, and your civilization, and you know, just by definition, you're going to be kind of an outlier at first. But he's been very courageous in articulating his views publicly at talks as well as publishing them. And I have a much more optimistic vision of the space, the new social space that's being created with the victory of Donald Trump for popular entertainment, including Hollywood, because what they're interested in making money. They're interested in profit. They cannot afford to alienate people who are living in those red colored parts of the United States of America. They just can't afford to do that. The world is, the United States is much larger than the blue states, the state of California, as they found out to their bitter disappointment that the American public has spoken. And we're also speaking about the type of movies we want to see. And I myself have a really difficult time in watching just the unrelenting, senseless plot lines and the gore and then the wretchedness and ugliness of a lot of these movies that we're seeing these days. And I know a lot of it is necessary. I'm not, being Pollyanna about this. I respect a film like Sin City that was directed by Frank Miller, I believe, who started out as a in the comic book world, as we're talking about. A lot of violence. It stars Mickey Rourke. Jessica Alba's in it. She does a wonderful job. Rosario Dawson, I think, is in it as well. And it has a lot of comic book touches, a lot of violence, but there's meaning behind it. There's purpose. There's intentionality by the violence. It's not gratuitous. And the same way I've been getting into Don Mancini recently. I mean, I'm systematically going through all his films again. He's the guy that conceived the Chucky, the doll, Chucky.
Oh, yes.
Seed of Chucky. You watch those movies and you think it's just a horror movie, but there's deep levels of subtext. He's always commenting these wry, humorous comments about what's going on in the society. For example, in The Curse of Chucky, it's about the unmanning and the diminishment of the American male, right? And these women who've been put in place to supposedly run what was formerly a man's world, right? This woman's she stands to inherit some money, and she's just disgusted by her husband. She says, "Oh, you're just a barista at Starbucks, right?" Maybe Hillary Clinton saw it or something, and she decided to use that as a put down. But this is in his movies, so you know, if you look at below the surface, I think you can see some hope in some of these popular culture productions. And I know that if you watch YouTube, it's just nothing but, yeah, it's all Satanism. It's all, satanic, Luciferian messages. No, I think popular culture is a lot more nuanced and multidimensional than that. It's not all a CIA construct, or maybe some of it is, and maybe a lot of it is. But even during the blacklist of the 1950s, people, artists, writers had a way of getting subversive messages out, such as the film Spartacus, right? Starring Kirk Douglas.
Yeah.
That was, the guy who wrote it, wasn't that Dalton Trumbo? Under a pseudonym, he had a front. But, I mean, the blacklist was still pretty strong, and the powers that be decided that the American people needed to be contained and wrapped up in a little box so that they wouldn't be able to think for themselves. But again, as we've been talking, it seems to be the theme of today's conversation, humanity, our creativity and our intelligence and our yearning for freedom is irrepressible. And I don't think that's going to change, even with Son investing $50 billion into the American economy. Right. We're going to find a way to subvert it. And I'm going to be here to try to mentor the younger generation to find out cool ways for us, as well as making a living at it, cool ways to find out how to flip the script on these people.
I think that's genius. I really do.
And we're going to do it to the popular culture, John.
I don't see why not.
Oh, yeah. We've talked about this before, but the price of entry is not that high anymore. All you need is a cell phone, right?
Pretty
and
much.
Maybe some software on your portable computer. That's what I have.
Yes.
And so I think there's some 9 and 10-year-old kids that are just doing that, and they're also thinking of new video games that are going to drive the power elite crazy. We're going to try to figure out how to get around these kids.
I think the millennials hold some real promise for the future.
They do. And you notice that the mainstream press likes to diminish them. And they like to pound in the message, oh, you don't have a future, and you have to get used to a new world of lowered expectations, and there's a shortage of resource. They're just completely pounding that message to students, to young people. And that's not a message you want to give to the next generation. You want to present them with a vision of hope, of unbounded, limitless potential and growth. My handlers at the University of California say, no, you will promote a vision of one sex only, one gender, no difference between man or woman, a post-sexual universe, a post-human universe. We'll reward you. If you do this, we'll give you an endowed chair. If you promote ugliness, such as Maria Abramovich and her school. By the way, all the theoretical foundations of people, performance artists, so-called, like Abramovich, that comes from the university. That comes from Yale. That comes from Columbia. That comes from all the different elite globalist, going back to the Russell Trust, opium trade type people who took over the American economy and government. That's where this art is coming from. That's where it's being theorized. And you have people like Edie Kosofsky Sedgwick, who wrote 20 years ago about crying and emoting, and affectivity, they call it. If you've been triggered, right? That's why you see on YouTube these ridiculous people crying and acting up because one of these professors with an endowed chair, Edie Kosofsky Sedgwick, says, yes, this is what we're going to do. It's called affective theory.
Edie Sedgwick.
Edie Kosofsky Sedgwick, not the model.
Okay, gotcha.
There's Edie Sedgwick, and there's this one is Kosofsky. And by the way, they look completely opposite. From one of them is really not that appealing physically. The other one was a model, of course, and a socialite. who was part of the Warhol circle,
Oh yeah,
amongst others, right?
crazy as hell too, as near as I can tell.
Crazy.
Yeah,
Yes.
bless her heart.
As a,
Of course, I think her dad
yeah.
had a little influence in that craziness. You know what I mean? They called him Fuzzy. I
Fuzzy.
don't think that's good. Right on his face.
No, but I wasn't she from an old American white Jew family, you know? I think she was like Mayflower stock or something. That was one of the points of interest about her.
Yeah, that
And
wasn't. They lived out at
sort of
Rancho.
like an Anderson Cooper type. And you know what happens there, right?
What's that now?
I think she's like of the same not lineage, but in the same social register as the Vanderbilt
Oh, gotcha.
people,
Yeah,
the Sedgwick family.
yeah, yeah. They lived out at Rancho Cucamonga.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, yeah. It was
Wow,
pretty
that's
strange. And
interesting.
then she went to New York and got involved in a bunch of things. I think drugs killed her at about age 27, something.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
I think there
speak.
was a feature film or a narrative film made from, and I think there's been some documentaries made about her as well. You know, in reading about people like Andy Warhol, we were talking about James Wood and John Voight, people like that, dissenters in Hollywood. But in reading about Andy Warhol, he was conservative. I mean, he was a social and political conservative. He didn't talk much anyway in general, so we just read into what we wanted to see, sort of like Bob Dylan. But I mean, he went to mass every Sunday, and he never left the church. And I don't know what his politics were, but I would put him in the camp of premature conservatives. Yet on a cultural level, I mean, he was responsible for making the '60s and part of the '70s what it is.
Yeah, John Lennon too. He was reputed to be very conservative.
Yes, especially toward the end. See, what happens, I guess, is that you can go so far left and so cutting edge that eventually you wind up saying, yeah, conservative is where it's at, or libertarian, because there's really not a lot that separates the libertarian, the conservative view than from that of the artist. Oh, by the way, if I can go back to Dylan very briefly,
Sure.
and I wanted to share the story with you because I think you'll appreciate it. Because we were talking about him being a no-show, right, for the award,
Yeah.
for the Nobel Prize for Literature. Well, there's another famous no-show, but this was for, I think, the National Book Awards. This is back in 1974. Thomas Pynchon, the author, and if anybody wins a Nobel Prize for Literature, an American, it'll probably be him, Thomas Pynchon. And I read his early novels and some of his latter ones, but I like the first three the best. But he won the National Book Award in 1974 for his book Gravity's Rainbow, which is a masterpiece. It's difficult, but there's all kinds of websites on Pynchon that'll help you through it. I recommend that book. But he didn't show up to the National Book Award, and it makes anybody's reputation if you win one of those. But he sent in his stead a figure that you well know. His name was Professor Irwin Corey.
Really?
Remember him?
Vaguely,
Professor
yes.
Irwin Corey. He used to be on the Ed Sullivan Show and some
Yeah.
of the talk shows. He would
Yes.
talk in this academic doublespeak.
Yeah, I remember
That
him.
was his shtick. That was his shtick. He'd look like an abstracted, absent-minded professor
Yeah,
type.
I know exactly who you
Remember
mean.
that? Is it coming
Yeah.
back to you?
Oh, yeah.
Professor Irwin Corey. Ladies and gentlemen, look that up on YouTube. But so Thomas Pynchon, and he's a mischievous rascal, in addition to being a literary genius. But he pranked the National Book Awards by sending Professor Irwin Corey in his smashed pork pie hat and his Chesterfield jacket and his rump-sprung pants and his floppy clown shoes to all these esteemed men and women of letters to receive the National Book Award in 1974.
Oh,
That's
man.
beautiful.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, that's Americana for you.
I cannot believe that you mentioned his name. I'm looking at his pictures now. Yeah, he this this is something. He sent
is
him in his
something.
place?
Pardon me? Yes. Yeah, he wrote an acceptance speech for, I think, for Irwin Corey, Professor Irwin Corey. I think it was penned by Pynchon, but it was just a bunch of academic doublespeak.
Professor Irwin Corey. This is an article from 2014.
Yeah, he had a long career. He didn't die that long ago.
Turning 100.
There you go. Yeah.
That was in 2014. So he's 102. Is he still alive?
I think he is.
Oh my gosh, that's extraordinary.
Did you have him on your show?
I'd love to.
That would make the Guinness Book of World Records for the oldest guest on a show, I think. For that reason alone.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right about that. Wow.
102-year-old guest, that's going to be Guinness, and your name's going to be attached to it.
No, he's alive. He's 102. Alive. He lives in Brooklyn.
Yeah, he lives in New York area. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I want to hear what he has to say. I mean, humor, ladies and gentlemen, and John, you know this, humor will get you through some tough times. And it'll also make you live longer.
Well, yeah, that's what Oscar Wilde said. If you want to tell people the truth, do it with humor or they will kill you.
Absolutely. And as Reader's Digest said, which is the opposite spectrum of Oscar Wilde, it said humor is the best medicine.
You know, I've got a couple of notes here.
The Reader's Digest every month at our house.
What's that? What about Reader's Digest?
We used to get that every month. We had an aunt that wanted to educate us, so that she bought us, every year, a subscription to Reader's Digest. And one of the columns I read all the time, one of the features was humor is the best medicine.
Oh, yes.
Right. There are all these jokes. They were all clean jokes and these little anecdotes. And, talk about Mad Mag. Between Mad Magazine and Reader's Digest and Life Magazine and TV, black and white TV, and music, of course, on AM. That was my education. That's the formative experiences of my life.
Reader's Digest is still out there.
I didn't even realize that.
I haven't seen a copy of it in years.
People make fun of it for being lowbrow, but, that's what we got.
I guess. Hey, $10 for a 1-year subscription. Save 82% from the official website.
What a bargain.
Yeah. I had a couple of notes here, and I don't know if they're... and it just says, Edward Teller and Lawrence Livermore Federal Laboratory, Loren Moray, environmental scientist.
Mm-hmm. That's from our last conversation.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I thought about that.
A couple of them ago, yeah.
I just have to ask, because on that same note sheet was something about Jim Jones and that whole Jonestown thing, and was it a medical experiment? And I was just wondering, how about there's this one, and then there's that thing with Doe, whatever his name really was, out in San Diego with the what was his name?
Heaven's Gate.
Oh yeah, the Hale-Bopp Comet guy.
Yeah, was it? It was a mass suicide. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
a ritual suicide for a bunch of people.
And I just wondered that seemed to be. They were a few years apart, but still, it almost seemed like that was the rage for a little while, was mass suicides. And then anytime something like that becomes any kind of a trend, you have to start looking at the shadow government agencies and try and determine, is this some sort of course, people look for conspiracies where there are none. Sometimes it's just coincidence and nothing more, but I'm wondering, what? Now we've gotten ourselves mentally to the place where we wonder, when's the next shoe going to drop? What size is it going to be, and how hard is it going to come down? And I'm thinking, of course, this is probably just chatter, but now the leftists want to throw a monkey wrench into the machine of the inauguration. They want thousands of people to descend on D.C. and force Donald Trump to take his oath of office behind closed doors and all this stuff. And you go, well, what's that got to do with Jonestown? It's like, well, I'm not really sure. Just that these things they seem designed. They don't seem spontaneous at all. Even the fire, even the fire in Oakland. I'm not suggesting that it was any kind of a psyop or anything of the sort. It's just that it seems that at certain times, when certain events are are occurring, there's almost a pattern of some sort of a mass incident, either a riot or a fire or somebody pulls a ripcord on their chest pack or something like that. And I'm just wondering, in your opinion, what would be the I mean, this is really a little bit of a reach, but I'm just wondering if really everything is an algorithm, and if there really is the ability of the human being to predict when these events are going to occur. I'm just wondering, do you have any idea on what is which dropping shoe do you think has the most potential to actually drop? Of all the shoes that could drop following the inauguration of this president, what do you think is the most disruptive shoe that might fall? I think that's what I'm headed at, because these things like Hale Bopp and Jonestown and Waco and the riots in Oregon and all of that stuff, and the murder of Lavoy Finicum and the whole deal, it's either just a series of unpleasant events, or they're occurring along a predictable timeline. Mm-hmm. Do you think they're random events, or do you think these are almost scheduled, these things that capture the public's attention for a while? I mean, from the Twin Towers to ISIS, these things seem to happen with some regularity, and they're so regular that I don't know. I'm not prepared to say, well, it's the devil that's orchestrating all of it, but it's like, well, they are being scheduled with some monotonous, with some regularity, and I'm just wondering, do you have any thoughts on what could scuttle this president's entry, the president-elect's entry into the actual Oval Office? There, I've gone all around the block.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with you that a lot of these events that you allude to are not completely random. There's a lot of chaos, I think, built into it. But I think a lot of we do know for a fact, for example, that the color revolution, so-called, the dark force behind that was the Open Society, right? George Soros is the name that keeps coming up. He's not the only one. He's probably the more well-known of them. And who is he fronting for? But I do agree with you that a lot of these events, they seem to cluster. For example, we've been seeing some student killer type people, such as the guy at Ohio State, and then we had the guy at the Batman killer in Colorado, I believe, that are students of neuroscience. They're usually graduates from coming out of neuroscience, so maybe they're test subjects that we all know about, reading about MK Ultra in the 70s and the 80s, right? And reading In Search of the Manchurian Candidate. So we're seeing that pattern, and I've commented on this. And by the way, making these types of correlations and drawing these certain relationships and patterns can get you fired from the University of California. They don't, because this is where these people are being produced, right?
Yeah.
But so far as the specifics are concerned, like who is going to try to gum up the works for the inauguration, that is beyond prediction. However, I would turn to some people in academia who have expert knowledge of algorithmic, higher level mathematics, such as that, I forgot his name, the individual that's been successfully predicting the outcomes of American elections for several cycles by now. This guy has advanced formula that he could probably plot to see if there is some sort of consistency with these seemingly random and isolated events, such as Heaven's Gate, or I guess the guy's name was John Doe Applewhite or something like that.
Yeah. I
do remember they were in bunk beds and they were all wearing identical Devo-type jumpsuits and athletic shoes, matching athletic shoes. This is down in San Diego, which, by the way, makes sense. San Diego is heavily militarized, and there are lots of private contractors working in these types of dark sciences. So if we had an algorithmic expert like that on our team and our side to chart all these and plot them and to see some sort of underlying pattern, that would be great. If anybody's listening that has that skill set, you have a job right there for you. Have a career.
Right.
You would be an oracle You'd be the algorithmic oracle of the now, and you'd be on the side of good. I think the military has those people working, and the university definitely have been working, but they're all wrapped up in these institutions. We need the counter algorithmic scientists. For example, I have a feeling that the guy that's been predicting the elections at a somewhat obscure university, he's probably going to get an offer to for a endowed faculty share at places like Yale. That's what they do with the opposition, and they're going to use his skills and try to figure out how he figured it out. That's how they maintain their power, by buying people off. They get rid of people that they can't, who are a little bit too misbehaved, such as myself. They find a way to get rid of you. But the other ones, they give them an endowed share at one of these prestigious institutions. But where I don't think there's going to be anything disruptive other than the expected demonstrations for the inauguration. I think that would be too obvious. If anything's going to happen, it's going to come later, and when our guard is down, and once we're have our eye off the ball, so to speak, they're going to try to throw one right by us.
Yes, I mean,
that
suppose
much
so.
Anybody can predict. That's not, any sort of deep insight on my part. But there are forces that genuinely view Donald Trump and a Trump presidency and all the change, the positive change that will bring about. They view that as an existential threat.
I see.
Yeah, but I think they're going to use soft power, and they're going to try to enfold and embrace him before going for him. Right? They'll try to ingratiate and get into his inner circle, and lower his guard, and swamp him and overwhelm him with a lot of work, a lot of details, so that they can go about with their little nasty business. But you know what? You have a public these days, in contrast to the days of the Kennedy assassinations. Pick ever, which one you want, or other examples of skullduggery, even Iran-Contra, in the 80s. We have a general public that's much more attuned and educated and primed for these types of events, right, to take place. And I think that's a deterrent in itself. I mean, look at the popular response to so-called Pizzagate. A lot of the stuff there is, albeit most of it's garbage, but there's just tons of it now. You can't escape it. I suspect a lot of Pizzagate material is probably being produced by these teams of cognitive infiltrators.
I'm really a little bit. I don't want to go over the line here, but I'm a little bit disappointed these people at the university are so short-sighted. So, is it even proper for me to ask when are you leaving the university?
I'm not sure exactly. I think I have a few more months at least. They usually like to pull the plug around the holidays.
Right.
Around Thanksgiving, Christmas, so that you'll feel depressed and, bad about yourself, and then they'll, try to pound you away. But I think I have a little bit more time than that. I think I'll make it into 2017. But if anybody wants to start a legal defense fund for me or with me, please contact me. I have a great lawyer. His name's Mr. Dan Siegel. Who is used to dealing with cases such as myself, and he's defended some quite noteworthy individuals at the University of California, including Peter Duesberg. He's in biology. He was the person to first challenge the official AIDS narrative that was being put out there, and he was ostracized by the medical community. I think they put him into the basement with no windows. They took his office, his laboratory away. And another guy that Mr. Dan Siegel has represented is Ignacio Chapela, who's I think another biologist who went down to Mexico and was testing the maize, the corn there, and was finding out that it was contaminated with GMO breeds. And he was supposed to suppress that because the university works for companies like Monsanto and for the GMOs and for all these horrible enterprises that are are intended to eradicate the human species so that we can move into the singularity. So that's my attorney, and I'm the hat trick there. I'm the third. I'm the tripod in these three people in University of California that they're trying to. So in that sense, I'm part of this pattern of this history, right? And I will write about it, and I have written about it, and I have all kinds of documentation. I've got a dead man switch on it as well. So if they get rid of me, I'll still win.
I get you. Wow.
See, yeah. So studying all this work and strategies and getting into the mind of the enemy,
Yes.
right? Because I also read a lot of the Chinese war strategy and Japanese war strategy classics translated, and as well as watching their movies and reading comic books as well. These have all equipped me. These are all very important survival tools, ladies and gentlemen. Right? This is what our culture provides us. It provides us strength, sustenance, but also strategies.
Yes, it does.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, your career and your life has been disrupted multiple times, I'm sure, John. But you adapted and you came up stronger than before.
Well,
And it's possible. Yeah.
it is possible. I mean, I go back to that thing I saw in that comic that I can't think of with the hole on the floor. I mean, it's completely ridiculous.
That one.
You know,
Now you got me going. I can't let go of that image.
well,
That's me.
you know that, and a couple of things I saw on Star Trek. One was a movie, and one was part of the series. And they were getting the Enterprise was getting sucked into a black hole, and they had the engines on full reverse. And Scotty says, "If I give it any more juice, I'll blow the thing to pieces." You know that thing. And Spock goes, "Hey Jim, to hell with it. Put him on full forward." But Spock, if we put him on full forward, we'll go at light speed into the black hole. He goes, "Well, we're going into the black hole anyway. What do you got to lose?" I'm paraphrasing here, of course. So he puts him on full forward, and they start backing out of the hull. And I thought, now that's interesting. And the second one, of course, is when Kirk was the only one to beat the no-win scenario by changing the rules. To change the rules of it a little bit, because I want to say it was his son said, "You cheated." He goes, "No, I just changed the rules."
Uh-huh.
And I thought,
There's a big difference there, huh?
I think there is.
Yes.
Look, I always feel like we're just sitting around the house, sitting around the den, just having a scotch and a cigar or something. Whenever I talk with you, it's just it's always a great conversation. I wanted to ask you one more thing, and that is you have some live appearances coming up at various universities around the country, or are there universities and other venues?
Well, they'll be primarily universities. I had a very good experience in early November 2016, right before Thanksgiving, at the University of California, Berkeley, of all places. I thought I would be received coldly or perhaps even in a hostile manner like Milo Yiannopoulos, but the students there gave me a lot of love and warmth for what I had to say. So what I'm thinking, John, is that I think your average student has had their fill of so-called social justice wannabe. I don't call them warriors because that's a disrespect for the people at Standing Rock and elsewhere.
Right.
But they're social justice wannabes, and I think that revolution in consciousness is taking place all over the country. So I'm going to be going on different trips. Hopefully, the first one will be at West Virginia University, where Milo Yiannopoulos showed up, and the opponents showed up as well to try to intimidate him by pulling the fire alarms and whatnot. And I'm going to be well, I won't give away what I'll be saying, but it's going to be newsworthy. I think it's the New York Times and the major media are going to cover my message, and it's going to be, just to give your audience a preview, an indictment of the university. And it's not just about academic freedom, but about the curriculum itself that is handicapping and dumbing down our young people so that they can't move into the future and avail themselves of this incredible renewal that we're poised to embark on with the election of Donald Trump. So I'll be doing that in the spring. I'll be traveling overseas, and talking to other people, and I'm taking my message to a national and international audience. I have perhaps a weekly program in the works that will feature some of our favorite topics like comics and music, AM radio, and art school, and all this other good stuff. And the people I want to talk to the young people. That's who I really want to reach. The ones who are doing the alternative music, the people who are doing the indie rock, the graphic artists, the amateur comic book people. We didn't even talk about game culture. I want to talk to all these young people who are going to form the foundation of the next American economy. It's going to be great, and I'm going to mentor them, and I can best do that by meeting them in person.
Excellent.
And by the way, can I give a shout out to my friend in Maui and his beautiful wife, Kit?
You sure
can.
His
name's Ron. And also to my dear friend, Dave Williams, who is a award-winning sound editor in Los Angeles. And thanks again. And I want to give the Fickle Finger Fate Award to University of California president, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security, Janet Napolitano, and the current administration at UC Davis. I'd like to give them the one-fingered peace sign.
the flying fickle finger of fate. I can't believe you said that. By the way,
well, we were in a 60s mode, so you remember the peace sign, right?
Yeah.
So I give them the one-fingered peace sign.
Well, that's the peace or else sign. I would just ask you, you gave a shout-out. Give the shout-out again to the first people that you gave the shout-out to, because I talked over it.
Oh, yes. I'd like to thank Ron. I won't give his last name. He's a great photographer who lives in Maui with his beautiful wife, Kit.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And he's also an avid listener of Caravan to Midnight, and he's a deep fan of John B. Wells. So.
Wow. Amazing. Well, thank you very much for all of that. Okay.
Sure. Well, absolutely.
I think you've already delivered a pretty good message to the world, but if this was the moment when you were called upon to deliver a message to the world, what would it be?
Read and listen and experience and travel and embrace reality, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you will prevail on an individual level, and when you prevail, the society prevail. We'll all rise together. We have this indomitable spirit. We have this creativity. We have this highly evolved intelligence. We have a written and recorded record of the best of all humanity and all civilizations have had to offer us for thousands of years. We have that at our fingertips, literally now, on the keyboard. And let's make use of it, and let's have some fun creating a new, robust society and culture, one built on health and awareness and intelligence instead of stupidity, decadence, and illness. We can achieve this. We're human beings. In addition to that, we're also Americans. That gives us a huge advantage.
Yes.
And God has shed his grace on us. I believe that. And I live my life with that belief.
That's beautiful, and that's why you are one of our esteemed ARC Knights. All the best to you over the Christmas holiday, and very best wishes for a Happy New Year. I have no doubt that you will prevail. In
you.
one form or another, you will prevail, and your message will get out there. I mean, you're doing your students a real service by busting these concoctions, these ridiculous, I don't even know what you'd call them, these pustules of disinformation and this erasing the line between men and women. Just, I would say don't go changing, but I don't think I have to say that. I don't think you will go changing. So I appreciate your time very much, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you so much, John. Mr. Wells, I really appreciate
No, please, John, always.
spending this time with you. Thank you, John.
Thanks, sir. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I really think he said it all, don't you? I really do. So, I guess we'll speak to you tomorrow night between 10 and midnight on Arc Midnight radio station KLIF. You can get it on. You can get it over TalkStream Live. You can get it on Red Nation Rising. You can get it on a good old AM radio station. I like to play some old songs on the AM radio station because it's got all that great compression and that exactly right EQ. It's still perfectly EQ'd for rock and roll music, which the older stuff is really the better stuff. And tip of the hat one more time to Bob Dylan. Twice, once for getting the Nobel Prize, and the second tip of the hat for not showing up. He continues to make a statement. Even when he doesn't make a statement, he makes a statement. So exercise caution in your daily affairs. Some really good advice Dr. Hamamoto gave us. Read, listen, travel, learn, and have some fun at it. You could live a serious and sincere life and still have some fun. It can all be fun. Immerse yourself in joy, and remember, happy is just a moment here and a moment there, happy moment there, happy moment there. But if you are immersed in joy, then you're in the deep end of the pool, and fun just goes along with everything you do, confronting the bad and the ugly in furtherance of achieving the good. Take care. Be seeing you.